Chapter 321 Breaking Through a Siege. A few minutes ago on one of the numerous small islands in the land of water, an inconspicuous house stood. In the house were 11 children and 3 adults. Suddenly, a person began knocking on the door impatiently. A man got up and opened the door. The person quickly entered the house. Panic and fear could be seen on his face. He said, "Renjiro-san, I sensed multiple ninjas heading towards this island. I think the rebel faction is heading towards this island." A frown formed on Renjiro's face. He asked, "How many did you sense, Makoto?" Yamanaka Makoto shook his head and said, "I saw 4 ships heading towards this island from the west, and I felt multiple chakra fluctuations from each ship. I didn't dare to sense them or stare for too long." Renjiro nodded. "Good work. They might be just passing by here. Change your transformation jutsu to another appearance and keep the kids quiet. It's best to not attract any attention." Makoto nodded. He dispelled his transformation jutsu and then transformed into a young lady and went into the room where the kids were and put them to sleep. The other 2 Konoha ninjas got serious as well. All 4 suppressed their chakra to civilian levels and waited. In the sea on one of the ships, a lady was standing on the bow while looking towards the island. She had long ankle-length auburn hair. She asked with a serious face, "Is your information accurate?" Ao nodded and replied, "Yes, I have received information that a group of people are kidnapping young children. Though I am not sure if they have evil intentions, as all the children whose information I received were orphans and in a very bad state. But there were many other similar orphans. Since only these kids were kidnapped, I'm afraid that it is one of the major villages trying to rescue and recruit young talent. Probably kids with bloodlines." Mai nodded. She agreed with Ao's speculation. After all, over the last decade her family had done the same in the land of water. The kids she rescued were completely loyal to her and had a reason to get stronger, Ao added. "But if it is one of the 4 major villages, we need to proceed with caution. Though I doubt anyone would want to enter into our mess. If they do and decide to support the Mizukage faction, we will be in deep trouble." Mai nodded and said, "Let's decide after seeing who it is. If we can kill them all, then we will do so and dispose of their bodies. The news can be blocked as well, for now. Create a perimeter and send 20 ninjas to attack them." O nodded and flickered onto other ships to pass the instructions. Soon, all 4 ships reached and docked on the island. The Konoha ninjas were alarmed, but Renjiro said they might be here to restock supplies. "Stay calm and don't leak any chakra, but be prepared to run. If any issues occur, then we may have to fight or even kill our way out." Renjiro's teammates had solemn faces. They were aware that the number of Kiri ninjas would be at least 10 times their number. However, all of them were Junins, and everyone had water affinity and could travel rapidly in the sea. They believed in their abilities to escape from an enemy that would be composed of a mix of Genins, Chunins, and Junins. Akimichi Ataru asked, "But what about the kids?" Renjiro replied, "We will leave them here. The rebels are known to take young kids and provide them with proper care and training, so they won't suffer." Renjiro's teammates nodded. After landing, Ao activated his Byakugan. He immediately noticed the 11 children in the house where the Konoha ninjas were. He whispered commands to the Junin leaders. Half the Kiri ninjas moved normally towards the market on the island, while the other half stayed near the ship. Ao and Mai waited on the coast. All of a sudden, 20 ninjas got in action and surrounded the house. 40 more ninjas moved and established a perimeter to prevent their targets from running away. Inside the house, a ninja sighed. Narakazuki said, "They are onto us." Renjiro nodded and said, "Break out towards the east. Avoid killing to leave some room for negotiations later. Also, don't use your secret techniques unless there is no choice." Outside the house, one ninja said loudly, "We know that you have kidnapped young children and are hiding inside the house. Surrender yourself and give the children to us if you want to live." He waited to hear any responses, but he received none. His expression became serious as he thought, "I can't blow up the house, it might harm the children. But if we attack, then there might be some traps." Without any other option, he commanded half of his ninjas to attack the house, and while the other half prepared themselves to provide backup. Meanwhile, Mai and Ao kept an eye from a distance. As the 10 ninjas reached the house and were about to break in, the wall suddenly broke apart on their own, and hundreds of small spherical stones were launched on the ninjas. The sudden attack caught them off guard. They were hit by the pebbles and immediately retreated back. The ninjas at the back immediately weaved hand signs. Water release water wall jutsu. A water wall appeared on all 4 sides of the house. The Kiri ninjas retreated through the water wall while the pebbles were stopped. However, instead of trapping the Konoha ninjas, they received an opportunity. They immediately broke out of the house and through the water wall on their east. That is, in the opposite direction of the ships. The Kiri ninjas were taken by surprise. Rinjuro and Akimichi punched their opponents in the stomach, knocking them out. Narakazuki analyzed. Good, they are just Chunin levels. They immediately broke through and began running. Rinjuro observed the situation. 5 ninjas in front of us, 2 Junins and 3 Chunings. 3 coming in from both directions. They will reach us. As for the rest, they are behind us. He instructed. Itaru, stop any attacks coming from the rear. Kazuki, Makoto, slow down the ones on our flanks. He immediately sped up towards the ninjas in front of him. Itaru weaved hand signs and slammed his hands on the ground. A gigantic wall appeared behind them. A bunch of water jutsus crashed into the wall and were halted. At the same time, multiple kunois with explosive tags appeared in the hands of Kazuki and Makoto. Both threw them at the ninjas running towards them from the sides, forcing them to dodge and slow down. Meanwhile, the 5 ninjas saw Renjiro rushing towards them. A few of them threw shurikens while others weaved hand seals. Renjiro used the snake hand sign. Earth release iron skin jutsu. His skin turned into black and at the same time chakra appeared on his body. The shurikens hit his body and harmlessly bounced off. The 2 Junins finally completed their hand signs. Water release great waterfall jutsu, lightning release false darkness jutsu. The 2 jutsu merged together and rushed like a broken dam towards Konoha ninjas. Chakra appeared on Rinjuro's palms as he slammed his hands on the ground. The ground in front of him rose diagonally. The electrified water hit it and was diverted harmlessly away from the Konoha ninjas. Instead, it moved towards the ninjas, chasing them from the rear. A frown formed on Mai's face as she watched the clash. She muttered, "They are strong." Oh nodded in agreement. The 2 Junins frowned. The one who used the lightning jutsu began weaving hand signs again. He wanted to destroy the ground that Renjiro had raised. However, before he could complete his hand seals, he and the remaining Kiri ninjas jumped and retreated. The ground under their feet transformed, and spikes were launched at them. Each of the 3 Chunnings had 4-6 spikes pierced into their body, while the Junin who was weaving hand signs took a couple of hits. However, none of the injuries were mortal. But, before they could regroup, Rinjuro flicked behind one of the Chunnins. With a strike to the back of his neck, he was knocked out cold. In the next couple of seconds, the other 2 Chunnins suffered the same fate. He flickered and appeared in front of the 2 Junins. They grabbed their kunai and attacked Renjuro from both sides. Renjuro's body was already covered with the iron skin jutsu. He punched at one Junin and kicked at the other, forcing them to block, using the opening. Kazuki and Makoto appeared next to Renjuro and attacked the 2 Kiri ninjas, forcing them to retreat. Renjuro quickly flickered behind Kazuki's opponent and kicked his back. The chakra-enhanced kick cracked numerous bones in his back and sent him flying. Being outnumbered by these times, and seeing how easily his fellow ninjas were overwhelmed, the last Junin immediately retreated. The Konoha ninjas ignored him and began running away while defending themselves from the attacks coming from their rear. To their relief, they reached the other end of the island. Rinjuro instructed, "Dive into the water and create 3 shadow clones. We will travel underwater in 4 directions." Everyone nodded. Unfortunately, before they could reach the shore, they noticed a silhouette standing on the water. She weaved her hand signs. Lava release melting apparition jutsu. She spat out a massive amount of lava that headed towards the Konoha ninjas like a flood. It cut off their escape route and forced them to stop, while the ninjas behind them closed the distance rapidly. Chapter 322 Threatening each other. Makoto looked at the incoming lava wave and gulped. He muttered, "The rebel forces have someone who can do this." Rinjuro became serious as well. He thought, "Terumi Mai. It looks like the old man's information was accurate. Still, this isn't enough to stop me. Unfortunately, I can't ensure the safety of these 3. Rinjuro fell into a dilemma. He was confident in running away by himself, but his teammates didn't share his skill or stamina in the body flicker jutsu. After thinking for a bit, he let out a sigh and made up his mind. He weaved a hand sign and said, "Don't fight, I will negotiate. They shouldn't dare to kill us." Narakazuki sighed in relief. He thought, "Good, I was afraid that he would try to leave. Renjiro might have managed to escape. But we wouldn't have managed to do the same." He looked at the lava wave and realized, "We made an error. We should have escaped when Makoto returned." Renjiro slammed his hands on the ground. A deep circular trench with him as the center appeared around the Konoha ninjas. A large inclined wall raised up from the ground along the inside part of the trench. The lava wave hit the wall and fell into the trench. Once again, another large-scale attack was directed away successfully by Renjuro. Mai was surprised. She wondered, "So strong?" His wall successfully blocked my attack and even diverted it. Who is this guy? Before she could think further, her eyes widened. Thousands of spikes appeared on the surface of the inclined wall. Due to her lava, the spikes looked red and extremely hot. Her expression became grim as she shouted, "Take cover!" The other Kiri ninjas didn't need to be told twice. They could see the spikes as well. Immediately, numerous water and earth walls were raised. However, no spike was fired. Instead, a voice was heard. "Turumi Mai, we aren't here to create trouble for you." Mai asked, "So, why are you here? And who are you?" O appeared next to Mai as a part of the inclined wall crumbled, showing the 4 Konoha ninjas who had stopped using transformation jutsu. O became serious as he said, "Send your Rinjiro, the commander of Konoha's forces that faced us in the last war." Rinjiro became serious as well. He analyzed. 2 elite Junins, one with a stolen Byakugan, and another speculated to have 2 Keki Genkai. I could take on any of them in a one-on-one fight, but I can't win against both of them in a head-on fight. Especially in water where I won't be able to use my earth jutsus effectively. Though Rinjiro was an expert at water jutsus as well, so were most of the Kiri ninjas. Without earth jutsus, he would get overwhelmed, since the spikes weren't fired. But still in position, Mai asked her remaining forces to stop attacking, and asked, "What is an elite Junin from Konoha doing so deep into my country?" Rinjiro replied, "Lord Heikage was concerned over the state of affairs in this country. He was worried for the children and sent me here to ensure their safety." Mai instantly knew that he was bullshitted her. She chuckled and asked, "To ensure their safety, or to bring talented kids to Konoha?" Rinjiro ignored her chuckle and replied, "The kids I rescued are at the house I was staying in. Lord Heikage's orders were to wait here until the civil war ended and to hand over the kids to the winners if I think that they would be well cared for. If the civil war continued for a long time, or if there was a danger, then I would have no choice but to take them to Konoha with me for their safety." Rinjiro's words were loud. All the Kiri ninjas were circling the wall he had raised. Hearing his words made them reluctant to attack him. After all, they had seen what atrocities common people had to go through due to Mizukage's actions. Some of them had suffered in a similar situation until they were rescued by the rebels. Of course, Mai and Ao didn't believe him. Mai said, "I don't believe you." She let out a chuckle and said, "Give me one good reason why I shouldn't kill all of you right here." Rinjiro let out a chuckle as well and asked, "Do you want the Konoha armies to enter the land of water and support the Mizukage?" Mai squinted her eyes. She riled her chakra up and asked, "How would they even know who killed you?" Rinjiro maintained his smirk and riled his own chakra up. The chakra he displayed was equivalent to Mai's chakra, shocking the Kiri ninjas who hadn't been a part of the Third Great Ninja War. He said, "You won't be able to keep me here. Unfortunately, I can't say the same about my teammates, so why don't we come up with a result which is acceptable to both of us?" Mai looked at Ao, who nodded in response. She looked back at Renjiro and said, "All right. But I will have to ask you to stay as my guest, and I will be taking the kids that you have rescued. In addition, Lord Heikage will have to send me a formal letter explaining your presence in the country and compensation for the same." Rinjiro nodded and replied, "All right, we will be staying in the same house, but I will need a messenger bird to contact Lord Hokage. As for the kids, as long as you promise to take good care of them and ensure their safety, you can have them." Mai nodded. The Konoha ninjas were secretly relieved, but no one showed it on their face. Mai and Ao followed Rinjiro to the house while the other Kiri ninjas began taking care of the injured. To their surprise, no one was dead and only one had major injuries. Mai and Ao knew it and hence had agreed to a truce. After the fighting stopped, the people on the island were relieved. They were afraid that they would be impacted by the fight. Fortunately, the fighting happened far away from civilian areas. Konoha ninjas were afraid that some Kiri ninjas might be hidden there for an ambush, while the Kiri ninjas didn't want any harm to befall them. So both stayed clear of them. After entering the house, Makoto woke up the kids while using a transformation jutsu and handed them over to Mai after consoling them a bit. At the same time, Rinjiro and Mai negotiated an amount for compensation. Ao took the kids and analyzed. 11 kids. I had received information for just 5 missing kids, but I calculated that at least over 30 would be missing. After sending the kids away, he asked, "Rinjiro, I have received information about 18 missing kids. Where did you keep the rest?" A frown appeared on Renjiro's face. He said, "These are all we rescued. Feel free to search the house or anywhere else on this island." O asked, "If they aren't with you, who took them?" Rinjiro shrugged and replied, "We are the only ones from Konoha here. If not us, then there might be someone else who is rescuing or abducting the kids." I'd recommend that you look elsewhere for them just like you found me. Oh looked at Renjiro but couldn't find anything on his face. He thought, looks like there are other forces active here as well. I guess Kumo also sent someone. The fourth Reikage is always looking to kidnap kids with Keki Genkai. That said, he is most likely lying. While Renjiro thought, I have already sent 35 promising kids to Konoha. Even if he suspects me, there isn't a thing he can do about it. Besides, I'm sure Kumo and perhaps even Iwa are doing similar operations here, so if they look in deeply, they will find and suspect them. After completing the negotiations, Mai said, I will ask the four of you to stay inside this house. If you need food or water, I can arrange them. Renjiro replied, all right, as for food and water we have it for obvious reasons. Renjiro wouldn't consume any food or water they provided. In fact, he was worried about them releasing poisons or chemicals into the air. Mai realized his concerns. She nodded and left. She arranged for 16 Junins and 12 Chunnings to keep an eye on the Konoha ninjas all the time. Chapter 323 Hiruzen's response. After leaving the house, Ao said, Lady Mai, I am afraid that he has abducted more kids. Mai nodded and said, yeah, but seeing his confidence, they shouldn't be here. He must have already sent them to Konoha, unfortunately. There isn't much we can do. If we ask, they will deny it. Until the civil war ends, such cases will keep happening. What we need to do is end this war as soon as we can. Oh looked at Mai. He could see the seriousness on her face. However, he knew that Mai couldn't end the war. He thought, unfortunately, that isn't possible. The Tarumi clan leader is too old, while the Sakai clan leader got injured in the Third Great Ninja War. The other clan leaders can't take on rank is ninjas, so we don't have anyone who can take on the fourth Mizukage. At least until Mai becomes a rank is ninja. Renjiro wrote a letter and sent it to Hiruzen. His teammates approached him. Itoru said, sorry Renjiro-san, because of us, you got captured as well. Renjiro replied, I can't just leave my teammates behind to die. Besides, we will be fine. Don't worry, his teammates nodded. Despite his statement, they knew that they were under a lot of risk. Kazuki thought, if another elite Junin from the rebel faction arrives, then even Renjiro would have difficulty escaping. Renjiro was aware of the risks as well. He didn't want his teammates to let down their guard and warned them, though I am sure that they won't try anything funny. Be on your guard. Mai's mother was from the Sakai clan, and there are rumors that she can use the vapor released. His words surprised his teammates. Kazuki asked, she can use 2 Keki Genkai? Renjiro nodded and replied, most likely, vapor release jutsus can harm us while we are inside the house, while lava jutsus can submerge the entire house in an instant. Luckily, we can avoid both by entering the ground. So stay on guard. His teammates nodded. They consumed soldier pills to stay awake. Round 16 hours later, a messenger bird reached Konoha. As soon as the message was received, the ninja immediately rushed to Hiruzen and handed him the scroll. As soon as Hiruzen opened it, his eyes widened. He looked at the ninja and said, call Shikoku here immediately. The ninja nodded and left while Hiruzen continued reading the scroll. In a few minutes Shikoku appeared in the room. Hiruzen tossed him the scroll. Shikoku's expression became serious as he started reading. After he read the entire scroll, he sighed in relief and said, Renjiro did well. Hiruzen nodded. Shikoku added, still, what bad luck to have. They didn't encounter any Kiri ninja for months and then directly attracted one of their strongest units. But for Kiri to extort so much money from us. Hiruzen said, 40 million ryo for the life of 3 Junins and the safety of 1 elite Junin is fine. Even though Renjiro could have escaped, it's difficult to say whether he would have managed to do that without any injury. Besides, we do have a lot of funds lying around. Shikoku nodded. Their excess money is why Hiruzen had sent Renjiro to pick up promising kids in the first place. He realized that Hiruzen had disregarded the costs the rebel faction would have had to pay to achieve that. But knowing Hiruzen, he didn't bother mentioning it. Hiruzen said, if everything went as in the scroll, then it won't be an issue. But what are the chances of the rebel faction attacking Renjiro and his team and setting up an ambush for the squad we send? Hiruzen's words made Shikoku fall into thought for a few minutes. He properly analyzed all the information. Finally, he shook his head and said, that is very unlikely. Doing that would force us to support the Mizukage faction. Even though we can't send many ninjas, we can provide them with substantial financial aid. Considering that they have requested our aid several times in the past, they won't do something so reckless. Hiruzen nodded. He had reached the same conclusion but wanted Shikoku to analyze it too. Shikoku added, the only question is, who do we send? The first names they thought of were Kakashi, Eagle and the other two elite Junins from the Senju clan. But after some discussion, Shikaku said, the Senju clan was very active on the Kiri front in the last war. If there is still some hate against them, the rebels might try to kill all of them, so sending them is risky. As for Kakashi and Guy, the mission is too risky. They already have someone who has stolen a Byakugan. They might get greedy for Kakashi's Sharingan to gain both of Konoha's Dotus. As for Guy, they should still remember the humiliation his father inflicted on them. Not to mention, the way Kakashi and Guy are growing, both will reach rank S in the future. Risking them on the same mission isn't wise. As for Eagle, he knows too many of our secrets to send him on a mission where things can go very badly. After all, even though chances of them making a move are minuscule, if they do, then they can easily assemble more than 500 ninjas there. Hiruzen agreed with his analysis. Due to the history of each village, it was easy to set off a conflict between their ninjas. He said, then Fujin, he is Renjuro's student after all, and he has no history with Kiri. Shikaku analyzed for a bit and nodded. He said, he would work. He was able to escape from Roshi, despite Roshi being able to use the tailed beast bomb. So he shouldn't have an issue in escaping if things go wrong. Though his team might face their demise, but he can't go as Fujin and instead should go as the Spectral Swordsman. Unlike Kakashi, the Spectral Swordsman is still covered in mystery, be it his identity or strength. The mystery can be a good deterrence, especially when combined with his high chakra reserves, and he did kill numerous Kiri ninjas from the Mizukage faction who pretended to be bounty hunters. In addition to the money, we can also give them the information we gained from Higashi Renzo. The information will make them think twice before getting any funny ideas, and will make them indebted to us at the same time. Hiruzen nodded and said, all right. I'll dispatch his ambush squad there. Shikaku nodded and left while Hiruzen called for Fujin. Fujin's team had just returned from a mission and were about to leave for their home when they were summoned. All immediately left towards the Hokage's office. Hiruzen looked at them and said, a squad led by Senju Renjuro was active in the Land of Water on a humanitarian mission when they were intercepted and captured by rebels. Fujin's eyes widened. Hiruzen noticed it and said, don't worry, they are safe. Renjuro could have escaped but stayed behind as his team couldn't. They have reached a deal with one of the rebel leaders. Your mission is to complete the deal and bring them back to Konoha safely. He gave Fujin the scroll that Renjuro sent and said, this scroll has the information regarding the deal, see and memorize it. He handed Yugo and Fumito a scroll each and said, these scrolls have information on Mai and Ao, the two strongest Kiri ninjas there. Memorize their abilities. Everyone began reading. Fujin let out a sigh and thought, looks like he will be fine. He handed the scroll back to Hiruzen and read up the information on Mai and Ao. It was quite similar to what he recalled in addition to some more information that wasn't very important. After everyone was done, Hiruzen handed Fujin a couple of scrolls and said, this scroll contains 40 million ryo, keep it properly, and the other scroll contains information we gained from the fake bounty hunter who targeted you. Read up. Provide this scroll to Terumi Mai. You can use this information to get an advantage over her or a favor from her. Fujin nodded. Hiruzen's expression became serious. He said, though I believe there wouldn't be any conflict, there is a chance it might be a trap. If it is, then focus on surviving. Disperse in different directions and make your way back here somehow. I will have ninjas deployed along our coast with Kiri. Fujin and his team nodded with solemn expressions behind their masks. They understood how bad the odds were if a conflict were to break out. Meanwhile, Hiruzen thought, if Renjuro ends up falling because of being held back by his teammates, then it will be sad. If his student were to fall due to the same reason, then it would be a tragedy. Only by dispersing can they guarantee Fujin's safety. He said, Fujin, you will inspect Renjuro properly. If he is placed under genjutsu or some other means of mind control, or if they are tortured, then I will give you the full autonomy to decide on how to proceed. Fujin nodded, though he hoped that situation didn't reach that stage. For one, he didn't want anything bad to happen to Renjuro, and secondly, he had no confidence in defeating Mai. After explaining all the details, Hiruzen said, Fujin, use your hawk mask for this mission. Fujin realized what Hiruzen's plan was. He nodded and asked, does Kiri have anyone who can fly? Hiruzen shook his head and said, not that I know, but their Mizukage is a perfect Jinwekuric. Flying against him won't be much help. Fujin nodded. His team left immediately. Chapter 324 High-speed travel. As they traveled, Fujin thought, facing a rank S, sigh, I hope that no combat happens, but if it does and they kill or mutilate Renjuro before I reach, what should I do? Noticing Fujin being lost in thoughts and recalling his reaction earlier, Buniro asked Captain. Who is Senju Rinjuro? Fujin answered. He was my Junin sensei after I graduated. Yugo already knew it. While Fumito and Buniro were surprised, Buniro said, Don't worry, Captain, he should be all right. Lord Hokage said that the chances of it being a trap are very low. Fujin nodded and replied, Don't worry, I am fine. It's best if the situation is peaceful, but if something goes wrong, prepare to run away. I might not be able to help you guys much considering their numbers, but I'll slow them down enough to give you an opportunity. Don't miss it, Yugo immediately said. You can't risk your life for us, Captain. Your speed with the body flicker jutsu is very high. We don't want to slow you down. Buniro nodded. However, Fujin said, You don't need to worry about me. They won't be able to hurt or capture me. Just focus on escaping. The determination in his voice made his team unable to respond. They just nodded and traveled without speaking more. Despite speaking with determination, Fujin wasn't very confident. After all, Mai was a rank S ninja, someone who'd become a Kage not long after. And unlike Gara, who was still a kid, she was in her mid-20s. Fujin thought, I knew that Miko would eventually die. As for Hoka, his life and death are controlled by the main family of the Hyuga clan, which is why I tried to keep a sufficient distance from them. Only Renjiro was someone who I knew wouldn't die for sure. But this world is too dangerous. One wrong mission or bad choice is all that is needed to be at risk of losing your life. Fujin was very close with Renjiro, of all the people he had spent time with in this world. He had spent the highest with Renjiro, though he wouldn't give up his life for Renjiro. He didn't want to see Renjiro die. Fujin sighed secretly and thought, Let's put my emotions away. They won't help me. If conflict breaks out, can I take on Mai? He recalled her performance from the Fourth Great Ninja War and thought, if I were to rank the 5 Kages in that war from strongest to weakest, Mai would probably be the weakest. Though having 2 Keki Genkai is cool and sounds strong, her jutsus aren't very effective on an open battlefield. Her lava jutsus are too slow, and I can easily dodge them. Same for the vapor jutsus, they are only effective in a closed space. As long as I don't get trapped inside a formation, I should be fine. But there are still some issues. For one, it's the 70 other ninjas with her. I can't take on them while fighting with her. Any distraction could be deadly. Secondly, if her speed is as fast as Hirisen, then I will be in trouble. And thirdly, the sea. I have no expertise in water jutsus. I can barely perform a few rank ANT jutsus, but they should all be able to manipulate water and make the fight ridiculously difficult for me. In addition, even though I am confident in dodging her attacks and making them harmless, it doesn't mean that I can harm her. To dodge her 2 Keki Gentai jutsus will force me to maintain distance, which would give her enough time to dodge my vacuum jutsus. So the best result I can hope for is a stalemate, which won't be of any help to me in this particular situation. Fortunately, I have 2 means of dealing with the situation. The first is obviously running away, but I don't want to do it. I couldn't do anything during Miko's death. After all, Itachi and Obito were just too damn strong, and I had no confidence in facing Danzo's and Hirisen's schemes or Miko's threat if she became unstable. But now, even though I'm not strong enough to face stronger rank as ninjas like Hiruzen, A or Onoki, facing someone like Mai and making her regret should be possible. I'll just summon Kyogen and make them experience hell. After all, how will they fight me when I'm so high in the air? Having thought about all possibilities, Fujin made his decision. If a conflict breaks out, he would engage them in aerial guerrilla warfare. Land of Water. Not everything was merry in Mai's camp. Though Rinjuro's words had gained the support of a good number of her ninjas, a few were still skeptical. There were many whose family was harmed by Renjuro or his subordinates in the previous war. Many ninjas still hated Konoha. A few banded together and approached Mai. Since they were her subordinates, Mai couldn't dismiss them casually. She sighed and said, I understand your emotions, but keep the bigger picture in mind. Right now we are in a stalemate against the Mizukage faction. If we push Konoha towards them, we will be at a bigger disadvantage. If the censors from Konoha were to join them, then our allies, who are hiding and building their strength, will be affected. Her words made them quiet down. They wanted revenge but understood what terrible cost it would have. One girl among them sighed and said in a sad tone, Aunt Chu had entered the Land of Fire a few years ago while she was being chased by a squad from the Mizukage faction. But both the squads completely disappeared after that. They should have encountered Konoha ninjas. I just hope that we could ask Konoha what exactly happened to her and to return her body. Hearing her request, Mai replied, It's been 3 years since then, Yumi. But all right, I will ask Konoha to send any information they have regarding her, though I don't expect them to say much. Does anyone else have such requests? No one else said anything. After all, their family members were mostly killed in the Third Great Ninja War. It had been a long time. And after Sakaichu went missing in the Land of Fire, the rebel faction avoided entering the country and instead preferred the weaker countries around it. So no similar issues occurred. Land of Fire, after Fujin gathered his thoughts and made a decision. He thought, traveling there even if we go at full speed will need around 2.5 to 3 days. But going at full speed will exhaust us. It'll be stupid to do so when the enemy is fully rested. But if we take a ship, then it might take over a week to reach, and the longer it takes, the more the chances of something going wrong. Oh well, no other choice. Fujin suddenly stopped. His teammates stopped as well. All three activated their chakra fields but didn't sense anything and were confused. Yugo asked, "What's the matter, Captain?" Fujin answered, "Nothing. Not many people know about this, so keep quiet." A small blade of wind cut his thumb as he began weaving signs and slammed his hand on the ground. A summoning jutsu, a majestic 9-meter-tall saber-toa appeared in front of them. Shocking Fujin's teammates, due to having their chakra fields activated, they could sense the vast amount of chakra in him. He turned his eyes to the strangers, who immediately stepped back. Fujin chuckled and said, "He is my summon. You can call him Kaito." He looked at Kaito and said, "Kaito, we need a lift to the Land of Water." Kaito grumbled, "I don't mind flying you, but don't treat me like a free transport service." Fujin jumped on his back and chuckled, "Sorry buddy, it's an emergency this time. I might even need some aerial support from you later. So I hope the situation doesn't deteriorate to that state." Though Fujin chuckled, Kaito could hear the seriousness in his voice. He asked, "Is it that serious?" Fujin nodded and replied, "I might have to summon Kurogen." Kaito replied, "Big brother has been itching for a fight for a long time. I'm sure he'll be delighted, but don't count much on me though. Fighting isn't my forte." Fujin nodded. Though Kaito said that he wasn't strong, Fujin knew that he was numerous times stronger than Goro. He looked at his teammates and said, "Hop on," seeing that he was friendly. They jumped on his back. Buniro asked, "Is Kaito gonna run all the way to the shore? It would help us save a lot of stamina." Fujin didn't reply. In the next moment, Kaito spread his wings. Buniro, Fumito and Yugo were surprised, with one flap of his wings. He took off the ground and broke through the clouds. Buniro was stunned by that sight. So were the other two. Despite being a ninja for over a decade, neither of them had seen such a sight. Chapter 325. Hand me the money, Buniro said. Summons are cool. I want one as well, Fujin replied. Good luck, you can find the summoning seals in the library, but be careful, it's very dangerous. I almost died. Preferably discuss with your sensei or the Ambu commander. They might help you reduce the risk, Buniro nodded. Fujin said, Kaito will carry us close to the target. Use this time to rest, eat a soldier pill. Your chakra and readiness need to be at the highest levels. Everyone nodded. Kaito flew straight towards the target for 8 hours straight. They finally reached close to the island. The island was surrounded by water for tens of kilometers. Fujin asked Kaito to stop around 7 kilometers away from the island so that they would be out of reach of all sensors. The group landed on the water. Fujin said, be on your guard. We will be heading straight to the island. Kaito hide above the clouds. If a conflict happens, then sneak attack their strongest fighters from above with your wind breath. If that fails, clear out their weaker ninjas. Also, one of them can spit lava and blow extremely hot steam. Both will be very harmful to you if they hit. So stay on guard against them and sudden changes in the temperature. Kaito replied, all right, good luck to you. He took off and disappeared above the clouds. The Konoha ninjas ran straight to the island when they were around 5 kilometers from the shore. A sensor sensed them. Everyone in Fujin's squad felt it and prepared themselves. 1 Junin and 3 Chunin from Mai's forces moved towards Fujin's squad, while a ninja went to inform Mai and Ao. The Kiri squad running towards Fujin noticed that they weren't slowing down. They were alarmed by seeing the ambi outfits. Round 1 kilometer from the shore, the two squads met. The Kiri Junin weaved hand signs while shouting, stay where you are and state your purpose. Water release water wall jutsu. A wall of water appeared in the path of the Konoha ninjas. However, blades of wind suddenly appeared out of nowhere and hit the water wall, causing it to crumble down. The Kiri ninjas were surprised by the result. Fujin said, I'm here to meet Terumi Mai, lead me where she is. The Junin frowned and asked, are you from Konoha? Fujin nodded. The Junin replied, I will have to ask you to wait here. Fujin sneered, wait on the water to meet with Kiri ninjas. He exerted a bit of his chakra and killing intent and said, "Get out of the way, I'll wait for her on the beach." The Junin frowned. He understood that conflict there would result in unnecessary casualties. He thought, if we fight on the island, then they will be outnumbered heavily and at a greater disadvantage. The chances of escape would be zero. What a fool, he replied, all right. Follow me. They began rushing towards the island. Mai and Ao were informed about the intruders. Ao activated his Bikugan and observed, there are 4 ninjas. They clashed with one of our squads, but they are much stronger. Mai frowned. She got out of her tent and asked, are they in danger? Ao shook his head and said, fortunately not. They are coming to the beach. Mai nodded and moved towards the beach. She wondered, are they from Konoha? But how did they send a squad in just around a day? Did Rinjiro send a message to Konoha, or is he scheming against us? Meanwhile, Rinjiro noticed, Mai and Ao stopped keeping an eye on us. Did they encounter trouble? He looked at his teammates and said, there seems to be an unusual movement. Sense what is happening, Makoto. Makoto nodded and activated his chakra field. His chakra field covered the entire island and went a kilometer into the sea. He said, I sense 4 additional chakras, 3 at the Junin level and 1 at the Chunin level. Most of the Kiri ninjas are reacting to them. His words confused them. Itaru asked, could Lord Hokage have sent a squad to rescue us? Kazuki shook his head and replied, it's just been a day since we sent a message. They can't reach so quickly. I'm afraid that it might be a squad from the Mizukage faction, or someone who isn't allied with the rebel faction as of now. The others agreed with his analysis. While being just a couple of 100 meters away from the sea, Fujin felt 7 sensors scanning him. He thought, well, since everyone is scanning so liberally. He activated and spread his chakra field as well. It covered the entire island. He immediately focused on 3 chakra signatures. 2 were rushing towards him and were clearly far stronger than the other Kiri ninjas on the island, and the last one was a familiar one. A smile appeared on Fujin's face as he realized, looks like he is safe. At least there is nothing wrong with his chakra, and the number of Kiri ninjas is the same as reported, though a few could still be hiding. Inside the house, a smile appeared on Renjuro's face as well. He had felt such a chakra field scanning him several times in the past. He muttered, sending my student on a mission to rescue me. The old man still loves to make everyone feel embarrassed. His voice was very low. Kazuki asked, did you say something, Renjuro-san? Renjuro stood up and said, they are allies. Get ready, we will break out as soon as there is a clash. Renjuro's words surprised them, but no one questioned him and prepared for a fight. Though Mai and Ao had left, there were still 16 Junins and 12 Chunnings keeping an eye on them. Breaking through them would likely lead to a clash, since Rinjuro wasn't sure who the rest of the ninjas with Fujin were, and because they were still heavily outnumbered. He decided to be patient. On the other side of the island, Mai and Ao reached the beach and saw Fujin and his squad. Fujin observed Mai and Ao. In addition to them, there were 20 other Kiri ninjas. 7 were Junins, while the rest were Chunnings. Fujin analyzed. Their numbers are divided into 4 groups. 1 is keeping an eye on the ships, another is in the village, the 3rd is keeping an eye on Renjuro, and finally these guys here. The odds are a bit better than I anticipated, though winning is still impossible. At the same time, Mai also took a measure of Fujin's group. She wondered, who are they, and how did Konoha send a squad so quickly, and why didn't the Hokage send an elite Junin to ensure the safety of the captured ninjas? She thought a bit and concluded. Did Konoha send a weaker squad to reduce their losses, in case this was a trap? Seeing that she wasn't speaking, Fujin said, Lord Hokage received Senju Renjuro's message and asked me to take him from here. A scroll appeared in his hand. He added, this scroll has the negotiated 40 million ryo. So bring the Konoha ninjas here and we will complete the deal. Mai asked, how did you come here so quickly? Fujin replied in a neutral tone, I'm afraid that isn't your concern. His tone surprised Mai and Ao, they thought, despite being outnumbered and outmatched. He isn't afraid. Does he have something up his sleeve, or is he not afraid of death? Mai said, I am afraid it is. How do I know that you are from Konoha? Fujin replied, just release them and they will confirm. That sentence eliminated the doubt of their identity. However, Mai didn't want to appear in a weaker position against a nobody. She asked, how do I know that the scroll has the money? Give me the scroll first and let me check. Fujin answered with a question, why would we bother traveling so far with so few people if we didn't bring the money? And Mai's expressions became serious. Fujin's rhetorical question was both a compromise and a threat. It implied that they couldn't win a fight, but at the same time, it also threatened Mai that Konoha could crush them on a whim. Fujin knew that they would be smart enough to understand the hidden message. The serious expression on Mai's face faded away as a seductive smile appeared. She giggled, "What an interesting young man. Unfortunately, you have no power here. Hand over the scroll or I will capture you as well." She suddenly riled her chakra. Massive pressure was exerted on the Konoha ninjas. A look of surprise appeared behind Fujin's mask. As for the rest, they were completely shocked. In fact, Buniro was terrified. Despite having met with Hiruzen numerous times, none of them had seen him exert his chakra, so they had never sensed such a massive chakra from anyone other than Roshi. But Roshi hadn't focused on them, so they never experienced such a domineering chakra. All three of them instinctively grabbed their weapons. Unlike his teammates, the surprise on Fujin's face was due to an entirely different reason. Chapter 326, Not Yet S Rank. Unlike his teammates, the surprise on Fujin's face was due to an entirely different reason. He thought, "That's it, her chakra is barely higher than Renjuro's, but why is it so low? I thought that it'd be higher than Hiruzen at the very least." Suddenly, it clicked. He realized, "See, she hasn't reached the S rank yet. There are still 6 years until the start of the war. She should have reached that level during this time. Now that I think about it, the scroll with her information said nothing about her being an S-ranked ninja. And if she was rank S, then the rebels wouldn't be hiding so much. Maybe even the Genjutsu on the Mizukage would have been figured out by now." During the last 8 hours, Fujin was under a lot of stress. Taking on S-ranked ninjas was not a matter he could take lightly. Even more so when they were holding hostages. But since Mai wasn't at that level, all the stress was released. A smirk appeared on Mai's face seeing the state of Konoha's ninja. The Kiri ninjas were also smirking. They saw that the leader of Konoha ninjas was looking dumbfoundedly at Mai, while his subordinates were under heavy pressure. Unknown to them, a smile appeared behind Fujin's mask. The scroll in his hand disappeared. He said softly, "Unfortunately, you won't be able to afford the cost." To everyone's surprise, Fujin riled his chakra as well, and to the horror of Kiri ninjas, his chakra was at the same level as Mai. In fact, it could even be said to be barely higher. His chakra lifted the pressure from his teammates and put the Kiri ninjas under pressure. At the same time, 2 swords appeared on the left side of his waist. Their sheaths had intricate designs carved on them. Ao's eyes widened as soon as they landed on the swords. He looked at Fujin again and realized, "Hawk mask. Those 2 swords. And those patterns." He immediately whispered, "He's the spectral swordsman." Mai was already surprised to see another Konoha ninja match her chakra. However, after learning about his identity, she felt that it was normal. The name Spectral Swordsman was very well known throughout the Land of Water. The reason for that was the insane number of rogue Kiri ninjas that fell to his blade. Over 80% of the rogue Kiri ninjas were estimated to have been killed by him. On the other side of the island, a look of surprise appeared on Renjiro's face as he felt Fujin's chakra. He looked in the direction of Fujin and thought, "He has already reached this level." Soon, the look of surprise was replaced with a prideful smile. He said, "Let's move." They appeared on top of their houses as Renjiro riled his chakra as well. Both Fujin and Mai sensed his chakra. Fujin chuckled and asked, "Do you still refuse to accept my terms? If you do, I'm afraid that the losses you will experience, even in victory, will far exceed what's in the scroll." Mai wasn't offended. She said, "I never thought that Kuniha would show that the spectral swordsman is from your village. But if the Hokage sent you, I doubt he'd lie about the money." She stopped exerting her chakra and said, "Oh, bring Renjiro and his squad here." Oh nodded and immediately flickered. Mai looked at Fujin. Though she was confident in taking him on, she knew that the circumstances weren't in her favor. A conflict would result in a large number of casualties on her side. And even if she managed to kill all Konoha ninjas, she wouldn't gain anything apart from a new and strong enemy. Renjiro's squad was surrounded by 28 ninjas. They were extremely tense, but since no conflict had started on the opposite side of the island, they didn't start the fight either. Their actions would depend on what Mai and Fujin decided. Soon Ao appeared and said, "Renjiro, come with me, you guys follow too." Renjiro and the Kiri ninjas nodded. Everyone left towards Fujin and Mai. Though no one showed it on their faces, everyone was secretly relieved. None of them wanted meaningless casualties. Meanwhile, Mai looked at Fujin and said, "If it weren't for the circumstances, I'd have liked to fight the one who killed so many of our rogue ninjas." "I wonder who you are behind the mask," Mai thought. "Though I have information on all the top Konoha ninjas and have a few guesses, I have a feeling that none of them are right." She focused on Fujin to memorize his chakra. Unfortunately, Fujin's chakra kept fluctuating the entire time, so Mai realized that Fujin could disguise his chakra, but the frequent changes gave her more information. She analyzed, to be able to change his chakra fluctuations so rapidly, he should be a very good sensor. Fujin chuckled and replied, "Why would I bother wearing a mask if I'd be willing to reveal my identity so easily? Besides, even if I show you a face, would you trust me?" Mai replied, "I guess not. Still, I do have a bone to pick with you. You killed too many of our rogue ninjas. I was planning to recruit them after the civil war ended to recover our strength." Fujin replied in a deep voice, "I would suggest you focus on winning the war first." Mai frowned. She analyzed. What does he mean by that? Does he know something that I don't? She had a bad feeling. Before she could ask, Ao and Renjiro arrived along with the rest. Fujin's eyes glowed as he observed the 4 Konoha ninjas. He and Renjiro exchanged glances. Renjiro nodded in acknowledgement to say that everything was fine. Fujin thought, good, no injuries or signs of torture, and their chakra flow is steady as well. He looked at Fumito, who nodded in response. Fujin said, "I'm glad you honored your part of the deal." Sarumi Mai, he tossed the scroll with 40 million ryo to Mai. Mai grabbed it and checked the contents inside the scroll. She nodded and said with a smirk, "It's been a pleasure doing business with you." Fujin knew that it was a taunt. After all, Mai had received 40 million ryo without giving anything in return. She didn't even risk the lives of her subordinates. However, the money didn't belong to Fujin, so he wasn't bothered. He thought, if that was my money, I'd definitely steal it back. But Hiruzen is too loaded. Just the trade deals he did with those 4 countries would bring over 100 million ryo on a monthly basis. And that is without considering the cost of elemental crystals. 40 million ryo is probably just pocket money for Konoha. Though it might be a small sum for Konoha, for Mai, whose finances were tight, this was like a boon from the heavens. Fujin looked at Renjiro and asked, "Ready to leave?" Renjiro nodded. The Konoha ninjas were about to leave, when Mai said, "Wait, I have 2 things to clear up." From their exchange so far, Fujin knew that she wouldn't abruptly begin attacking. He said, "Speak." Mai said, "Round 3 years ago, one squad from my faction was chased into the Land of Fire by a squad from Mizukage's faction. However, both squads disappeared. I want to know what happened to the squad from my faction. I hope the Heikage can provide me with the truth." Fujin thought, just because he gave you money, you expect him to speak the truth. He was about to agree, when Renjiro asked, "Who were in the squad, and who were the ones chasing?" Before Mai could answer, a young girl said, "The leader of the squad was Sakai Chu. She was chased by a squad led by Karatachi Kazuki." Fujin looked at the girl and thought, she looks a bit familiar. After a few seconds he recognized her and thought, Sakai Yumi, I didn't expect to see her here. Regardless, it looks like Mai is nurturing her, or at least has some hopes from her. Fujin didn't pay any more attention to her. He was stronger than her during the Chunin exams. And right now, the difference in their power was even larger. Renjiro said, "I don't know anyone by the name of Sakai Chu, but the mission to deal with infiltrators back then was taken by me. I remember encountering a squad of 5 led by Karatachi Kazuki. Unfortunately, we didn't see anyone else. We managed to find him because we found 2 corpses that were brutally mutilated and blown up into pieces. After defeating him and searching the forests, we found another body that was destroyed and blown into bits. I don't remember the exact number, but the blood on their weapons was tested to be from more than 15 people. But we never managed to find any other bodies, so they might have been eaten by wild beasts or killed before entering the Land of Fire." Chapter 327, A Tragedy. Renjiro's words shocked the rebels. To be killed and then blown up to pieces was extremely cruel. However, most Kiri ninjas didn't doubt his words. They had seen the horrendous acts committed by the Mizukage faction. They had no doubts that they would do something as heinous as that. Mai was a bit doubtful of the accuracy of Renjiro's words, but she knew that nothing good would happen by pursuing such an old matter. Even if Konoha were the one to kill her, she wouldn't be able to get justice for Chu. Instead, her followers might pressurize her to make a new enemy and reduce their chances of victory in the war. After all, it was unreasonable to expect everyone to see the bigger picture. She let out a sigh and said, "What a tragedy." She looked at Fujin and asked in a serious tone, "I hope you can tell me what you meant by that statement." Her first question was just to satisfy the people who believed in and followed her. However, the answer to the second question was what she wanted to know. She had a feeling that it would have a significant impact on her campaign. Fujin replied, "Sure." He took out a scroll from his jacket and tossed it at Mai. Mai caught the scroll and opened it while Fujin said, You have underestimated the Mizukage faction. Your estimates regarding their finances are way off. I'd be very careful if I were in your position. Fujin's words confused the Kiri ninjas. Some thought, why would we hide from them if we had underestimated them? However, they became serious as they noticed the change in Mai's expression. Her face had a very grim expression. She thought, I thought they were all tired of the situation in the country and went rogue, but the majority of them were rogue only in name. They did bounty hunting and sent money back to the village. If that is indeed the case, we have heavily underestimated their finances, and their resolve as well. We thought that if we stayed hidden, their forces would begin disbanding in large numbers, and our chances of victory would increase. In fact, we even tried to recruit them. Wait. Her eyes widened as she realized. No, we managed to recruit a few of them. But with this information, there is a chance that they are spies that infiltrated our forces. Shit, we are in danger. The rebel camp was currently hiding and engaged in a guerrilla campaign. But if they had spies among their ranks, then it was only a matter of time before they encountered a trap or were assaulted by a massive force. Fujin studied her expressions. They were as per his expectations. He had already read the scroll and was waiting for an opportunity to hand it over to her. Mai looked at him and let out a sigh. She said, I don't know how to thank you for this information. Its value far exceeds the 40 million ryo we agreed upon. I'd have returned the money if my finances weren't so tight. Unfortunately, I have nothing of equivalent value that I can offer you right now. We owe you a favor. Fujin nodded and said, good luck with your campaign. Mai nodded. The Konoha ninjas finally took their leave. Fujin looked at the skies for a second before leaving. As soon as they left, Eo asked, what information did he provide? Mai rolled back the scroll and said, we might have a problem. I'll need your help later. For now, let's leave. Mai didn't want to spread the news. It might cause unnecessary suspicions. The Kiri ninjas under her command quickly boarded the ships and left the island. While alone, Mai informed Eo of the information sent by Konoha. I was stunned as well. They decided to properly inspect every rogue ninja they took into their forces in the last 3 years and to limit their participation in critical activities. Meanwhile, the Konoha ninjas ran rapidly across the seas after creating some distance. Renjiro asked, how did you come so quickly? Fujin replied, we had some aid. I'll tell you later. Renjiro was puzzled, but he understood that Fujin didn't want that information to spread, so he didn't push him for an answer. As for Kaito, he had seen Fujin look up at him. After they left, he ended the summoning jutsu and returned to Mount Muteki. Fujin asked, did they do anything after capturing you? Renjiro shook his head and said, no, she didn't want to get into a conflict with us. Besides, she profited heavily from our encounter. Fujin nodded. Mai received 11 talented kids, 40 million ryo and a critical piece of information that could save the lives of hundreds of her allies. Her gains were too high, and the only cost she had to pay was the time she used. By comparison, Konoha didn't get much. Fujin thought, it's rare to see Hiruzen suffer a loss in diplomacy. I guess he wants the rebels to win and use this as an opportunity to provide them some assistance. It should also create goodwill between the two villages when Mai wins in the future and could provide an opportunity to ally in the next Great War. Considering how brittle the ties between Konoha and Suna are, this could provide more breathing space for Konoha. After all, Konoha doesn't have the same domineering power as it did during the previous Great Wars. Thinking about it from this point of view, he didn't exactly suffer a loss. After all, 40 million ryo isn't much, and the information was useless in our hands, and the kids originally belonged to Kiri too, so getting 3 capable Junins and a prospective ally for the next war is more than enough gain for such a small cost. That said, I wonder if Hiruzen would have taken the same steps if he had known how strong Naruto would be during the next Great War, or that the next war wouldn't be fought between the villages. Unlike Fujin, Hiruzen didn't know what the future generation would accomplish. Though he was hopeful about their futures, he had to make his calculations based on the ninjas that were active currently, and he didn't know that the next Great War would be fought between the alliance of shinobi villages and Akatsuki, so his calculations were very appropriate. As they moved, Norikazuki asked, did you bring any means of transportation? Fujin replied, nope. Did you guys consume any soldier pills? Kazuki replied, yes, round a day ago. Fujin said, all right, let's just run all the way back to the Land of Fire then. We will rest in a patrol camp. Fujin's casual reply stunned the Nora. He muttered softly, run for 2 days straight. Great. Makoto and Atari chuckled at his sorrow. As for the others, they were already used to the laziness of the Nora clan ninjas. They quickly formed a basic plan on how to travel. which places to avoid and how to use their senses to avoid any more confrontations. The group traveled for half a day straight and reached close to the outer ring of islands in the Land of Water. Once they exited it, they would leave the area officially controlled by Kirigujka. However, Makoto sensed something. He turned his attention towards a small island to their right. Smoke could be seen coming from the island. He said, "Something horrible is happening there. It's as if death is spreading across the island." His words surprised the rest. Fujin extended his chakra field as well and said, "There are no ninjas there, but I can feel numerous people dying by the minute." Renjiro said, "Let's check it out." The Konoha ninjas changed their directions and entered the island. They headed straight to the village on the island. But as soon as they got close to it, they slowed down. Everyone's eyes widened. The scene in front of their eyes was straight from a horror story. The houses in the village were all damaged. Some had a few cracks, others had crumbled. However, that wasn't the worst sight. The entire village was dyed in blood. Corpses that were sliced open littered the streets. Among these corpses were a few people that hadn't died yet, but were not too far away from it. Fujin frowned. He walked into the village and asked softly, "Who did this?" Renjiro let out a sigh and said, "It is likely the Mizukage faction. Over a dozen villages and towns in the Land of Water have been eliminated by them in this manner, mostly due to suspecting some people with bloodlines among them or if their village had any dealings with the rebels." Chapter 328 Rescue. Renjiro's words surprised Fujin's team. Unlike Renjiro's teammates, who had spent almost 4 months in the Land of Water, they hadn't heard of these atrocities happening in the Land of Water. To know that a village was committing such atrocities on their citizens was shocking. Even Fujin, who had some ideas regarding the civil war, was shocked. He thought, "No wonder such a massive rebellion is happening here. I initially thought that it was just the clans with Keki Genkai against normal clans, but this is disturbing." Fujin let out a sigh and wondered. Is this the act of some lunatics in the Mizukage faction, or has Obito made the Mizukage commit such atrocities? Renjiro said, "Makoto, check who all are alive and can be saved. Heal them." Fujin objected, "This place just had a conflict. If we spend time here, we could once again be attacked." Fujin was opposed to Renjiro's decision. After all, Renjiro's squad was captured not long ago, and seeing the horrendous state, he doubted whether any of them would be able to live a normal life after experiencing such a horrifying incident. Renjiro shook his head and said, "The situation is different. If we see any ships coming, we will run away. If not, we will save as many here as we can." Fujin sighed and asked, "Would they even want to live after experiencing such an incident?" Renjiro replied, "That isn't something we should decide." Fujin said, "All right, I'll help out Makoto, but keep an eye on your chakra levels, Makoto. Running away will be difficult if it is low." Makoto nodded. The group immediately began looking for survivors. The village had around 450 people. However, only 60 were alive when they arrived, and among those 60, 20 were in a very critical state and couldn't be rescued without complicated medical treatments. Makoto healed most of them, while Fujin healed their external wounds. Among the survivors, 24 had lost one or more limbs. Only 16 were well physically. However, their mental health was a complete mess. It wasn't a surprise though. Not only did they undergo tremendous physical pain, but they also lost their loved ones, and the streets were still covered by their blood. The Konoha group spent half a day on the island. Fortunately, no one sailed to the island. After putting everyone to sleep using genjutsu, Fujin asked, "What are you planning to do with them? Leaving them here wouldn't be wise." Renjiro nodded and replied, "Yeah, the trauma is too intense. I'll build a ship for them to sail away towards nearby islands. As for whether they survive or not, it's their fate." Fujin nodded. Though Konoha was doing well, they couldn't interfere anymore in this matter. Until then, no other country had interfered in the civil war happening in the Land of Water, but once Konoha stepped in, the remaining 3 villages would also have to step in. It would make the situation very complicated and could lead to an all-out war between the 5 villages, with the Land of Water as the battlefield. During the night, the Konoha ninjas built a boat large enough to carry 40 people. The next day, they asked whether the people wanted to stay on the island or leave. Knowing that the Mizukage's forces could return, everyone chose to evacuate. However, one young boy around 6 years old approached Renjiro. He was very skinny, had pale skin and white hair. He looked into Renjiro's eyes and asked, "Can you train me to become a ninja?" His voice was surprisingly calm and steady. Renjiro bent down to his level and asked with a kind smile on his face, "What is your name, brave child?" The kid answered, "I am Kyushu Hayumi." Rinjiro asked. Hayami-kun, why do you want to become a ninja? Fujin noticed as the boy struggled to control his emotions. He clenched his fists and said, they made my mother and sister scream in pain for a long time before killing them. I don't want to be helpless while my loved ones are harmed. Fujin and the other ninjas sighed on hearing his words. Rinjiro let out a sigh as well. He said, it's unfortunate what happened here, but to become a capable ninja, you will have to train extremely hard for years. Are you willing to do that? The boy answered. I will train as hard as you want me to. Rinjiro placed his hand on his head gently and said, all right, I will train you to be a ninja. He looked at the survivors and asked, are any of your relatives alive? The boy shook his head. An old man approached and said, Hayami-kun never talked much with anyone, but he was very close with his mother and sister. Please take good care of him and take him away from this country. The people already knew that Rinjiro and the rest were from Konoha. They wanted to evacuate to the Land of Fire. But Rinjiro declined their request as he wasn't able to guarantee their safety. Rinjiro said, all right, I'll take good care of him. At the same time, he thought, the boy's chakra is a bit dark. He might become an expert in yin release. The Konoha ninjas saw the survivors sailing away in the boat. After they left their sight, the group began running towards the Land of Fire once again. Rinjiro carried Hayami as they ran across the seas. Seeing people run on the water was a first for Hayami. However, despite his young age, he didn't seem interested in it. His mind was still affected by what had happened to his family. Due to the break, Rinjiro's squad had to eat another soldier pill to continue moving. After traveling for over a day, the group finally reached the shores of the Land of Fire. The group took a break at a patrol camp before continuing their journey to Konoha. During this time, Fujin interacted a bit with Hayami. Though the kid was polite, he wasn't very responsive. Fujin thought, recruiting talented kids not from the village. It leaves a threat of young kids being sent as spies by enemy villages, even if that isn't the case. The loyalty of such ninjas can also be questioned, but I guess Hiruzen doesn't even consider this issue. The Will of Fire. What a convenient tool. I need to come up with a similar ideology to ensure the loyalty of my members, but, though it seems simple, it is very difficult. After all, what fuels this ideology is the sacrifice of the previous generations. If the older generations don't sacrifice themselves for the next generation, then this ideology will collapse in no time. Sigh, I hope I can come up with something good enough to influence a few people. Otherwise, the only way would be a curse seal. A few hours later, the group reached Konoha and arrived at Hiruzen's office. Hiruzen looked at Renjiro and said, it's good to see you all unharmed. At the same time, he looked at Fujin meaningfully and thought, for them to have returned so quickly, Fujin should have used his summons to fly over. It was the right decision to send him over. Renjiro nodded and replied, thank you. Unfortunately, our mission was interrupted. Hiruzen looked at Hayami and asked, so, who is this young friend? Renjiro let out a sigh and said, on our way back, we encountered a village in the Land of Water that was destroyed by Kirigujka ninjas from the Mizukage faction. We rescued and healed a few survivors. Kyushu Hayami was one of them. He wants to become a ninja, so I brought him with me. Hiruzen observed the boy carefully. With a smile he said, all right, we will take good care of you Hayami. I have a lot of hopes for you. He looked at Renjiro and asked, should I make living arrangements for him? Or will you be taking him to the Senju clan compounds? Renjiro looked at Hayami. Hayami also looked back at him with eyes full of hope. Renjiro said, I'll make arrangements for him in the Senju clan compound. Hiruzen wasn't surprised. Over the last few decades, especially since the start of the Second Great Ninja War, the Senju clan frequently took in orphans. Hiruzen nodded and said, all right, I will leave it to you then. He looked at Hayami and said kindly, Hayami-kun, can you wait outside the room for a while? We have some matters to discuss. Hayami obediently said, I can. He walked out of the room. Hiruzen asked, so, how did the mission go? Fujin replied, it went well. I had a small confrontation with Mai but no conflict happened. Since everything went well, I created some curiosity in her and handed her the scroll. She was grateful and said she owes us a favor. Hiruzen nodded and said, good, the mission can be considered a complete success. Though your mission was cut in half, it can be considered a success as well. Renjiro, I have already moved the kids you sent over into the academy. Renjiro nodded. They discussed some more details. Finally, Renjiro said, I'll be needing some time off. It's been a while since I returned home. Hiruzen nodded and replied, you can leave. Send me a mission report later. The group left the office. Renjiro looked at Fujin and said, "Meet me tomorrow at noon in Yakiniko with Hoka. It's been a long time since we have been together." Fujin replied, "Yeah, it's been a while. All right, I'll call him." Renjiro nodded. He took Hayumi with him, and the group went their separate ways. Chapter 329, A Get-Together. Renjiro took Hayumi to his home and introduced him to his family. His wife and children entertained Hayumi and made him feel at home, while Renjiro arranged for Hayumi to stay in the Senju clan compounds. After making arrangements, Renjiro took him to the TI department where Hayumi was put to sleep using a genjutsu, and the authorities did a thorough checkup on him. They inspected his body for any possible seals. After confirming there were none, they had a Yamanaka ninja read his memories. Once again he was cleared, and they confirmed he wasn't a spy. After confirming, Ibiki let Renjiro take him back. The procedure wasn't created especially for Hayumi. All the 35 children Renjiro had sent before were subjected to the same. Of course, none of the kids remembered any of this. The next afternoon, Fujin walked into Yakiniko. He heard Fujin here. Fujin turned his head in the direction of the voice to see Hoka. He joined him and said, "It's been a long time." Fujin had gone to Hoka's residence the day before. Unfortunately, he wasn't at home. So he just dropped a message for him and left. Hoka replied, "Yeah, it's been over a year since we last met up. Time flies so quickly. Seems like the Amber life is very hectic." Fujin nodded and said, "Yeah, some missions need me to stay out for months." He let out a sigh and added, "And for some reason, Lord Hokage seems to like giving me a lot of missions. You are lucky to not be in it." Hoka nodded and replied, "Yeah, it gives me a lot of time to train." Fujin chuckled and teased, "So, why aren't you a Junin yet?" Hoka immediately became dejected. He said in a depressed tone, "Lord Hokage is so strict when it comes to promoting. I can already fight against Junins from other major villages, and even in my clan. But he promoted me to just special Junin. Father said that I'll probably need another couple of years to be officially promoted to the Junin rank." He looked at Fujin and asked, "What about you? Do you remember the promise we made 2.5 years ago? You only have 6 months left." Fujin replied, "I got promoted to Amber Captain a few months back. That rank is equivalent to Junin. I'll be Junin when I retire." Hoka quickly caught onto the information. He asked, "You are planning to quit the Amber?" Fujin nodded and answered, "I don't get much time to train. But I still have some work to do in the Anbo. It should be completed in around 6 to 8 months. Hoka replied, "All right. Let's compete when you are done with your work then." A grin formed on his face as he said, "I can't wait to fight against you again. Is fighting all you two can think about?" Fujin and Hoka turned their heads to see Renjiro approaching them. Fujin chuckled and replied, "Well, we can only do what our sensei taught us." Hoka nodded, "Yup, feel free to blame our sensei." Both laughed at Renjiro's expense. Renjiro sighed at their antics and joined the table. It had been just over 3 years since Fujin and Hoka were Genins under his tutelage. However, now Hoka was a special Junin, while Fujin was an Amber Captain. In terms of strength, Hoka was at the Junin level while Fujin was as strong as Renjiro, though he lacked in terms of overall capabilities and experience in terms of speed and lethality. He had already surpassed Renjiro. In a fight, Renjiro would need to be very careful against Fujin. Renjiro was very proud of his students. However, he couldn't help but think, "It's a shame that Miko got caught in the Uchiha mess. She would have been at the Junin level as well if she had been alive." The server delivered them meat as the three of them caught up and shared some of their experiences. Of course, no one spoke about any missions that had to be kept a secret, so Hoka and Renjiro were unaware of the stunts Fujin pulled in the Land of Wind and his fight against Roshi. After having lunch and talking for a couple of hours, Renjiro asked Fujin, "So, how did you make it to the Land of Water so quickly?" Fujin replied, "I signed a summoning contract. My summons can fly quite fast." Hoka was surprised. He said, "Summons that can fly you? That's very rare. Congrats, Fujin." Renjiro added, "No, summons that can fly 4 people and probably fly at twice the speeds of messenger birds. That's even more impressive." Hoka was surprised. "That good?" "Wait." He squinted his eyes and stared at Fujin. Fujin realized his thoughts and chuckled. Hoka let out a sigh and cursed, "Bastard, it's already annoying to fight you when you keep running away. For the last 2 years, I kept working on strategies to combat your style of combat. But now you can fly. How the heck am I supposed to fight you if you fly and keep attacking from above?" Fujin didn't reply and just grinned. Unknown to Hoka, his summons had great control over wind chakra and were just as lethal as him if vacuum jutsus weren't considered. Hoka sighed and said, "No summons and no running and hiding during our fight." "Wait. No clones either." Fujin tilted his head and asked, "Are you gonna tell your enemy that?" Hoka replied, "It's a spar, that's different." Renjiro chuckled and said, "So much talk about sparring. Do you two want to spar against me?" Both Fujin and Hoka looked at him. Hoka replied, "Sensei, I know that you could take 3 of us at the same time back when we were Jennings, but do you think that you can take the 2 of us at the same time right now as well?" Over the last few years, Hoka's taijutsu improved a lot. It didn't have any flaws, and he was confident in going up against Renjiro when it came to taijutsu. With Fujin supporting him with ninjutsu, he didn't think that Renjiro would have an easy time against them. Renjiro shrugged and said, "It's not necessary to win in a spar." Fujin said in an uncertain tone, "Sparring. I'm kinda against doing much of that now." Fujin's words surprised Renjiro and Hoka. Hoka asked, "Why so?" Fujin replied, "The last time I sparred with my team, I had a hard time controlling myself. The missions in Amber have honed my killing instincts to an extreme. It gets difficult to control myself when I see openings. And it is very dangerous considering that I use winjutsus primarily. One bad attack could end up killing a friend." Fujin's words surprised Hoka. Unlike Fujin, Hoka went on missions that were tailored to his growth. The Hyuga clan had a proper system in place for anyone who worked hard to get stronger. So Hoka benefited from it, and unlike Fujin, his missions didn't involve as much killing. Renjiro said, "Yeah, that happens when you spend a lot of time in Ambu. Even after leaving the Ambu, it stays for many years. That said, losing control over your actions is not good. It may seem advantageous in battle, but you'll end up making a lethal mistake at some point. You should find a sparring partner to learn and control those instincts." Fujin nodded and said, "Yeah, I guess Lord Hokage feels the same. My missions over the last few months don't involve much fighting." After his clash with Roshi, Hiruzen realized that Fujin's tactics and thoughts had developed to become extremely lethal. He realized that Fujin's actions in the Land of Wind wouldn't be a one-off event. So to tone down his aggression, Hiruzen had assigned him missions that dealt more with diplomacy and protection, rather than elimination. Though the mission to rescue Renjiro's squad had a chance of high-level combat, it too fell under diplomacy, as Fujin had to avoid conflict to ensure the complete success of the mission. So as such, Fujin hadn't killed a lot after his mission to eliminate the base that Suna had created in the Land of Fire. After talking for a bit, the group decided against sparring. Renjiro was concerned that an all-out spar between them would wreck an entire training ground. Though the village generally disregarded such destruction, he had a feeling that the scale might surpass what the village could ignore. As for Hoka, he wanted to keep his improvements a secret from Fujin, so he didn't push for a spar either. Fujin changed the topic by asking, "How many kids did you rescue from the Land of Water?" Renjiro replied, "Including Hayame, 36. Fujin was surprised. He said, "That's quite a lot. Do any of them have Keki Genkai?" Renjiro shook his head and replied, "They are too young, so it hasn't manifested in anyone, but some of them do have the bloodline. Hopefully a few of them will unlock their Keki Genkai, though even if they don't, it's fine. At some point in the future, one of their descendants will unlock it." Fujin nodded. Establishing a new bloodline clan in the village was a long-term project. It would take a few decades to show results, and the frequent wars and deaths during the missions would be a huge obstacle towards that goal. But Fujin wasn't very interested in the long-term aspect. He hoped that a few of the kids would unlock their Keki Genkai very soon. He was planning to start fusing his own elements soon to learn a Keki Genkai. Having a reference would be a huge help for him. He thought, "I'll need to keep an eye on those kids." Seeing how much time had passed, Renjiro said, "I lost track of time. I have some work to do at home. It was good meeting both of you again." Hoka nodded. "Yeah, we should do this more often in the future." Fujin and Renjiro nodded. They said farewells and went their separate ways. Chapter 330 Konoha's Light in Darkness. After a few days off, Fujin once again became busy with his Ambu duties. Hiruzen was quite busy as well. He made arrangements for Hayami to join the first year in the academy. Though the kids Renjiro brought from Kiri were talented enough to be placed in elite batches, Hiruzen didn't do that and instead distributed them in the normal batches that had 100 students. His goal was to ensure that they made good friends in Konoha, combined with his frequent motivational speeches. The unsuspecting kids were quickly assimilated into Konoha. Once the assimilation was complete, Hiruzen analyzed, "Of 36 good kids, their circumstances will make them train harder than most, and they might even motivate others to train hard, once their strength grows beyond the normal students. I'll expand the elite batches to include the ones that stand out." Seeing how good they were, Hiruzen thought, It'd be good if we could recruit such kids frequently from there. Unfortunately, it will be very difficult and risky. Both sides should have noticed these events. They'll be on the lookout for such operations done by other villages, not to mention, there will be competition from other villages. He began analyzing to check if he could continue the operations in the land of water somehow. However, he could only think of one solution. He wondered, should I ask Danzo to make a move there? Hiruzen was in a dilemma when it came to Danzo. Though he was a comrade, he had been very extreme in the past few years. The Uchiha's loss was a big blow for Konoha. In addition, unlike others, Danzo won't obediently do what Hiruzen wanted, he thought. The only way Danzo would agree is if I let him induct the kids into Root. No, he will agree even if I decline and would instead secretly induct the most talented kids he finds into the Root. But I have already disbanded the Root. Though he still has a few dozen Root ninjas under his command, it is a far cry from what he controlled before the Uchiha massacre. If I let him recruit kids from here, then he will begin rebuilding the Root again. Hiruzen began analyzing the advantages and disadvantages of such an action. After around 10 minutes he decided, though the rebels aren't lunatics like the Mizukage faction, at the end of the day, they are still a different village. I can't guarantee that they would ally with us, even though Danzo is extreme at the end of the day. He is still loyal to Konoha. I'll let him take over this operation. Even if he recruits talented children now, he will need around 10 years to raise a large number of Junins from their ranks. He will be too old by then to have any more ambitions towards the Hokage seat. Besides, a glint appeared in Hiruzen's eyes as he decided, been around 6 years, I'll pass my seat to Kakashi or Fujin, and I'll make the other the commander of Root and force Danzo to retire along with me. That would be the best outcome for Konoha. Though there were a lot of reasons for Hiruzen to be upset with Danzo. It was undeniable that Konoha had benefited heavily due to him. Of all the villages, Konoha was the only village where a rank S ninja willingly took over the role of darkness and stayed away from the limelight. One rank S ninja leading in the light and another hiding in the dark was a deadly combination. Even if Konoha didn't have any other rank S ninjas, Hiruzen was confident in defending Konoha during the second and third Great Ninja Wars, despite being surrounded by enemies on all sides. So if Hiruzen could see any opportunity to create such a combination in the future, he would make a move towards it. He let out a sigh and thought, I was hoping that the ones who replaced us would be Jua and Orochimaru. Back then, my relationship with Danzo was very good. If Jua had accepted the Hokage position and Orochimaru succeeded Danzo, we would have been in a stable position for another couple of generations. Unfortunately, Jua didn't take my seat, and Orochimaru wanted to become the Hokage instead of letting Minato be the one. After Minato's death, everything became a mess. I had given up any hopes of recreating this arrangement. To think that such an opportunity would present itself once again. And unlike the ones before, Kakashi and Fujin can take the roles of both, light and darkness. It would provide a lot of flexibility to the village. After dissolving the Root, Hiruzen initially didn't intend to revive it again. There were two main obstacles to reviving the Root. The first was a capable leader to succeed Danzo, and the second was the manpower. Fujin's performance in the Land of Wind provided Hiruzen with a second possible future leader. And the orphans in the war-torn Land of Water provided him with the required manpower. Though there were some risks, the advantages far outweighed them in Hiruzen's opinion. Having concluded his thoughts, Hiruzen decided on going forward with his plans. He disappeared from his office. A few seconds later, he appeared in a secret underground chamber. Danzo, who was sitting in a chair and handling some work, suddenly looked up. To his surprise, Hiruzen had shown up unannounced. He asked, "What do you want?" Hiruzen replied with a question, "Are you aware of Renjuro's mission in the Land of Water?" Danzo looked at Hiruzen without speaking, but there was no change in his expression. He replied, "The one to rescue orphans from the Land of Water." Hiruzen nodded and said, "He ended up confronting the rebel faction, so I had to stop the mission. But it's a waste if we don't act on such an opportunity. I want you to deploy your forces and rescue such orphans." Danzo squinted his eye. He asked, "My forces? Did you forget that you disbanded Root?" Hiruzen sighed and asked, "Do you think I'm oblivious to everything you do?" Danzo didn't reply. He knew that Hiruzen knew about the forces still under his control, but he didn't expect Hiruzen to confront him about it. Hiruzen said, "So, will you?" Danzo replied, "I want my former Root ninjas back under my command." Hiruzen shook his head and replied, "That's not negotiable. Root won't be officially started either. A frown formed on Danzo's face. He asked, how will I rescue the orphans? Hiruzen replied, use your current forces. You can deploy all of them if you want. In addition, the kids you recruit can be recruited into Root. But I want proper documentation on each of them, along with yearly reports on their progress, especially if someone unlocks Keki Genkai. Danzo was surprised by the offer. He thought, I do have enough force to undertake such a task, but why is Hiruzen being so generous? I thought I would only get to induct a few kids sneakily, but if he allows me to induct them openly, I can rebuild my Root forces in 8 to 10 years. Hiruzen stared at Danzo, completely understanding his thought process. He thought, I don't want to do something like this to an old comrade, but you left me with no choice. I can only give you false hope and take it away from you before it gives you any results, not knowing Hiruzen's plan to force him to retire. Danzo replied, all right, I will take over this mission, but you can't change your mind in the future. Hiruzen nodded and said, of course, recruit as many orphans as you can, but be careful of the Mizukage and rebel factions. Their fighting will intensify soon. Danzo nodded. Hiruzen disappeared from the office as rapidly as he appeared. After he left, a frown formed on Danzo's face. He thought, Konoha's current condition is very stable, so why did Hiruzen give me an opportunity to re-establish my forces? He thought for a long time. But couldn't come up with a definite answer. He decided, whatever, no matter what he is up to, I'll just counter his schemes when they pop up. Besides, even if I figured out his schemes, I would still want to recruit those orphans. The following day, 36 Root ninjas sneakily left Konoha. They moved into the Land of Water and began their mission of rescuing a large number of orphans who were suffering due to the war. Round the time the Root ninja reached the Land of Water, Fujin entered his basement. There were multiple scrolls in his hand. He laid the scrolls on the floor and opened them while thinking. In the last 8 months, I have learnt all the new Fuin Jutsu symbols that were in Section A of the library. In addition, I have learnt hundreds of new seals. Finally, my basics are good enough to begin learning this jutsu. He sighed and muttered, it's been such a long time since I wanted to master the seal. Finally, I can do it. The scrolls in front of him contained information and a training plan to learn the 4-symbol seal. Chapter 331 4-symbol seal. Fujin sat in his basement, carefully reading the information in the scrolls. It wasn't the first time he had read it. In fact, it was the first seal he studied after getting promoted to the Ambu captain rank. But the last time he realized that he wasn't ready to learn the seal. After reading all the information once again, Fujin summarized, 4-symbol seal. A seal made of just 4 symbols. Sounds so simple. Unfortunately, that isn't the case. The truth is that this seal contains thousands of symbols arranged in a very complicated manner. In terms of complexity, this is the most complex seal I have seen. The thousands of symbols are arranged in such a way that they take the shape of 4 symbols, giving the seal its name. The 4 symbols themselves have a particular function. The first symbol is to make the seal adaptable. It allows certain changes to be made to the seal such that every 4-symbol seal is different from each other, sort of like a signature or a fingerprint. And once the seal is created, this symbol allows the seal to be further modified. Due to this, the ones who know the seal and are aware of the details in this symbol can make it stronger or weaker if the host doesn't resist or considers them a threat. In addition, the seal can also be influenced by other seals to make the sealing much stronger. The second symbol is to suppress what is sealed inside this seal. It restricts the amount of power the tailed beast controls. In fact, it can pretty much shut down all power of a tailed beast and forcefully put it to sleep. The third symbol is to make the seal resilient. If the tailed beast somehow overcomes the suppression of the second symbol, then the resilience granted by this symbol is enough to temporarily stop a tailed beast from breaking out and provide the host with an opportunity to resist and fight back. It would also provide defenses to prevent someone from forcefully changing the seal, though if the difference in power between the two ninjas is high, it won't be much help. The last symbol's effect is a bit vague and variable. It uses the willpower and determination of the host to increase or decrease the effects and strengths of the other 3 symbols. Though it isn't a fixed boost, it is a good addition. After all, the willpower of any person will be the highest when death is right in front of them. So at the moment when the tailed beast is about to break out forcefully, this symbol would provide a huge help to the host. In addition, if the host faces an external threat, such as a situation where his friends are being killed while he helplessly watched, the determination to live or resist the tailed beast can decrease, lowering the power of the seal and allowing the tailed beast to break out and rampage against a superior enemy force. Fujin stayed in silence for a few minutes to digest all the information. After around 7 minutes, he analyzed. If the purpose is to only seal a tailed beast or something similar, then this seal is good enough, but there are some major flaws. The first major flaw is that it doesn't steal chakra from what is sealed inside. So if a tailed beast is sealed inside a ninja, then that Jinwekarit can only act as a nuke. He won't be able to access any chakra of the tailed beast, unless the tailed beast breaks the seal and kills him before rampaging on the battlefield. And the other major flaw is that, unlike Naruto's seal, this seal doesn't allow anyone else to enter the seal and help them fight the tailed beast. So these effects should be from the 8-trigram divination seal, which is created by overlapping 2 4-symbol seals. Unfortunately, the library doesn't have the 8-trigram divination seal. And asking Hiruzen for it will raise a lot of questions, starting from how I even know about that seal, or what I plan to do with it. Fortunately, I do have some ideas. The 4-symbol seals have to be overlapped in such a way that they don't completely overlap with each other. I can try learning using the trial and error method. If I can't, then I can only think of a way to ask for it from Hiruzen without arousing suspicions. After all, for me to implement any of those plans I created, the 8-trigram divination seal is more important than even the flying thunder god. There was a reason why Fujin wanted to master this seal. It was due to an idea he had long ago when he was in the academy. Over the years, he introspected the idea several times, though he became more and more aware of how difficult it would be to make that idea a reality. He never found anything that would completely rule out the feasibility of his idea. Finally, he was about to take a major step towards it. Without wasting any time, Fujin created 80 shadow clones and began learning the seal. The complexity of the seal meant that even with numerous clones, Fujin would still need a long time to learn and master the 4-symbol seal. For 13 days straight, Fujin kept working on the seal until he was called for another mission. After dressing up in his Anbu attire, Fujin flickered towards the Anbu headquarters. He appeared inside Eagle's office and asked, "Another escort mission?" Eagle shook his head and said, "No." He placed a map on the desk between them, pointed at a location, and said, "The Ito family in the land of waterfalls has recently been experiencing strange incidents. There have been a lot of murders happening in the villages in their territory. In some cases, the entire population inside the villages have disappeared, and there have been no signs of struggle. Taniguchi sent some of their ninjas to investigate but came empty-handed. I sent another Anbu squad to investigate, but they didn't find anything either. They stayed in their territory for 1 month, during which no incident occurred. However, a few days after they returned, the incidents began happening again. For some reason, whoever is doing this is only targeting the civilians, and they have managed to hide from any ninjas investigating. The previous squad I sent specialized in tracking and investigation but was unsuccessful as well, so I'm guessing that a seal master or grandmaster might be involved." Fujin listened carefully. Eagle added, "Your mission is to inspect who is causing this. If you find the culprit, you can decide whether to kill or capture them, or even let them go if you have a good reason. If you don't find anyone, then make a decision on when to stop and return back to the village." Fujin nodded and replied, "All right, we will move out soon." He took the map that had all the markings of where the incidents had happened. He went into his team's assigned room and analyzed the information while his clones moved to call his teammates. Fujin analyzed. "This case is weird. The targets are all over the Ito family's territory, and no one area has a higher number of attacks. Still, attacking civilians impossible Fuin Jutsu mastery. Is it the Jashin? They were active in the Land of Grass last time, and this area isn't too far off from them. But the Land of Earth is also close to this place, so there could be a possible Igawatga involvement. I need to be careful in case the Jinkyukaris or Onoki are involved." In around half an hour, his team assembled, ready to move. Fujin explained the mission parameters and left the village. Though Fujin's squad didn't have anyone who specialized in tracking or picking up small clues like scent or hidden footprints, every one of them was a sensor. Though Yugao and Buniro's sensor skills were very good, they were still quite handy. Both had improved considerably during the last 7 months. Within a day and a half, Fujin's team reached the town in the Land of Waterfall where the Ito family lived. Chapter 332: A complex situation. Fujin's squad went straight into the Ito family's mansion, seeing that another Amber squad from Konoha had arrived. They were quickly welcomed into the mansion. Ito Yuya immediately appeared and said, "I am glad that Konoha sent another squad so quickly. Come with me, I'll update you on the recent incidents." He began walking inside the mansion while the Konoha ninjas followed him. As he walked, Fujin looked to his left and right. Numerous servants were staring at them. On seeing his gaze, they quickly averted eye contact and continued their work. A frown formed on Fujin's face behind his mask. He thought, "That's weird. Not all of those gazes were filled with curiosity. Though no one showed it on their faces, it felt like someone was excited to see us. There is a problem in this mansion." He remembered their faces and continued following Yuya. They soon entered a large room with a lot of maps. The room had several ninjas and people from the Ito family, who were trying to come up with a solution. As soon as they entered, all eyes landed on them. A look of relief appeared on their faces. While Fujin identified several faces, one stood out. He looked at one person and thought, "Hara Yuto, as expected, he is here as well." Hara Yuto was a capable Junin from Takagonka. In terms of strength, he was about the same level as Fumito. Round a year ago, Fujin's previous ambush squad had taken a mission to eliminate the ninjas from the Kawaguchi family, who wanted to kill Ito Yuya and Kara Yuto. So Fujin had some impression of them. Fujin walked towards a circular table that had a large map. The map was of the territory they controlled. He asked, "So, what's the current status?" Yuto answered, "This is the most detailed map we have. The villages crossed out in black are villages where the entire population disappeared." He pointed towards one village and said, "This village faced their fate 5 days ago. The remaining 3 happened before your previous ambush squad had arrived. As for the other villages, the numbers next to them state how many people have gone missing. We have tried searching for them continuously but have had no luck until now. There is no pattern to their activities. The people kidnapped are of both genders, all ages and all professions. The attacks are also at completely random places. We have tried forming a pattern to deduce what they will attack next, but have never succeeded." He took a pause and looked at the Konoha ninjas. He continued, "However, there is one thing. Not a single ninja has gone missing. The villages where we sent a ninja squad didn't experience such incidents. But if we withdraw the squad, then such attacks resume. In addition, when the Konoha Enbo squad was here, not a single attack took place. But after they left, it resumed. Everyone in the room was completely helpless. They had tried all they could but couldn't do anything to resolve the situation. Previously, they had specifically asked for a squad that specialized in tracking. But that didn't help them either," Yuto concluded. "So our analysis is that the culprit is someone who specializes in stealth, but either isn't strong enough to face our ninjas, or doesn't want to risk facing us." Fujin's subordinates also fell into thought while Fujin focused on the map. Trying to find any attack patterns, Buniro asked, "Why don't you deploy a ninja squad to every village? Wouldn't that solve the issue?" Buniro's analysis was on point. Though they won't find the culprits, they would avoid taking any more losses. However, Yuya helplessly replied, "Unfortunately, we don't have that many ninjas. We tried asking our village for it, but the request was refused because they were afraid that these attacks would spread to other territories." Yuto nodded and replied, "In addition, if we do that, then the defenses of Takagonka will be weakened. We have to shield against the possibility of this being an attempt to launch an attack on our ninja village." Their explanations made Buniro's solution unimpleastonita. He didn't say anything else. However, Fujin muttered while staring at the map, "Yeah, but you might not have a country if you don't stop this." Fujin's words caused a few frowns to appear in the room. However, no one said anything. They were concerned about it as well, and since Fujin was staring at the map, they didn't want to disturb him. Fujin continued observing as he thought, "Random incidents. Nothing is random. Even if they used a chance-based system, patterns will appear. If they tried avoiding that by having a human decide, even then the patterns will appear due to that person's mentality." He stared at the map for 5 minutes before concluding, "Unfortunately, it is too complicated. I should have brought a Nora with me." Finally, Fujin stopped looking at the map. Yuya looked with a hopeful expression and asked, "Did you notice anything?" Fujin shook his head and asked, "No. Can I kill some of your servants?" A frown appeared on his face. He couldn't decide what to say. Seeing him struggle, an old man said, "You can, but we need a proper explanation. You can't kill anyone on a whim." Fujin thought, "All right, they don't seem to be complete scumbags, so it shouldn't be done by them." The Ito family was one of Fujin's suspects. After all, every incident occurred in their territory, and wherever their ninjas went, the incidents didn't happen. So all the helpless people in their territory would begin looking at them as their protectors from the mysterious enemy that keeps kidnapping ordinary citizens. However, Fujin had no proof for the same, and from their previous record, such behavior was unlikely, so he decided to move ahead with the lead he had. Fujin replied, "All right, summon all your servants." Attempting to calculate the pattern and predict the next attack was a helpless proposition. Not to mention, they could stop attacking like they did when the previous squad was here. Fujin had no intention of wasting a month in that town, so he could only solve it through a different approach. In around 15 minutes, all the servants in the mansion were gathered in a large hall. They were confused as no information was provided. Ito Yuya asked everyone to maintain silence and stand in discipline. Fujin looked at Yuya and asked, "Are they all?" Yuya nodded. 4 shadow clones appeared next to Fujin. They walked towards the servants and carefully observed them. After seeing a servant, the clone said, "You can leave." The other clones acted similarly. They took their sweet time in dismissing the servants, due to the time and since they didn't know what was happening. Every servant who hadn't been sent away was getting more and more tense as time passed. Half an hour later, only 16 servants stood in the room. Fujin observed them and thought, "These were the 16 staring at me in the corridor." Fujin's clones dispelled themselves as Fujin said, "Lock down the doors. You 16 stand next to each other." The ninjas from the Ito family closed all exits while the servants nervously stood next to each other. While Fujin continued staring at them, finally one couldn't bear the tension. He asked, "Can you say what this is about?" Fujin gazed at him and observed for a minute. He concluded, "Not him." He said, "We have come here to investigate the recent incidents happening around this town. After looking for a long time, we realized that a servant working in the mansion has turned traitor." Fujin's words surprised the servants and the Ito family. The Ito family ninjas looked at Fujin with skepticism. After all, they had already investigated each of their servants and hadn't found anyone suspicious. The servants quickly began defending themselves. One said, "We will never betray the hands that feed us." Another said, "Lord, please recheck your information. We will never do that." Others complained as well. Fujin said, "My information is accurate." He made a hand seal and said, "I will give the traitor an opportunity. Confess. If you do, then I will let the Ito family handle your punishment." He released some killing intent and stated very coldly, "But if you don't, then not only will I kill all of you, I will also slaughter each and every member of your families." Bufra no Ekari Jutsung. The Ito family frowned again. Once again Fujin had done something that they didn't approve of. However, since he hadn't acted yet, they controlled themselves. After all, they had already talked with him. Only Yuto noticed what Fujin did. He thought, "Again jutsu, but which one?" Since Fujin used only one hand seal, Yuto couldn't identify what he did. The servants began arguing and pleading hysterically. They didn't want their families to suffer. However, as they shouted, they suddenly felt a pain in their stomach. They all held their stomach and fell to the ground while screaming in pain. The Ito family finally had enough, but Yuto said, "It's fine. Stay back and watch." Meanwhile, a frown appeared behind Fujin's mask as well. He thought, "That's strange. None of them are ninjas. And I didn't sense anyone speaking lies. Was what I felt wrong? Or is there such a good civilian spy?" The pain soon turned into panic. As the servants noticed maggots drilling through their abdomen and crawling out, they pleaded with Fujin to spare their lives. Fujin looked at them and said emotionally, "For one last time, have you done anything to betray the Ito family or passed information to someone else?" All 16 servants replied negatively. However, Fujin's and Fumito's eyes landed on one servant. Both detected that he was lying. A few seconds later, all the servants lost consciousness. Fujin looked at Fumito, who nodded in response. Chapter 333. The Right Question. Fujin created a shadow clone who walked towards the servant who had lied and picked him up. Fujin said, "Give me a small room. I want to interrogate him." Yuya asked, "What about the remaining 15? And what did you do to them?" Fujin replied, "They were placed under a genjutsu. They will wake up in a day or so, keep them in the same room and have a doctor monitor their health, and they won't remember much of what happened. So make up a story for them." Yuya replied, "All right." Soon, a closed room was arranged for the Konoha ninjas. Fujin placed a few privacy seals in the room and said, "Go ahead, Fumito, check what he is hiding." Fumito nodded and walked towards the unconscious servant and placed his hand on his head. Yin chakra entered the servant's brain as Fumito began reading his memories. Fujin observed him carefully. He thought, "It was a boon to have a Yamanaka on my squad. In the last 6 months, I have seen him read memories several times. Thanks to that, I have gained valuable insights into the technique. I used some bandits to experiment on, and I can finally read some memories. But my method is still too crude. I have only a 25% success rate, and I can't read all the memories as the brain gets destroyed after a few minutes. Still, this is good. In a few years, I will be able to use this technique properly. For 30 minutes Fumito kept reading his memories. Finally he let him go and took a deep breath. Fujin asked, "So, what did you find?" Fumito replied, "He isn't a traitor, or at least he doesn't consider himself as one. That is why we couldn't detect any lies earlier. He lives alone, as his family died around a year ago. He knew who the killer was but had no proof and couldn't do anything as the killer held a lot of influence in the Ito family. He could only bottle it up in himself and continued living bitterly. However, a few months ago, a man approached him. He knew about his situation and promised to get justice for his family if he passed information about any foreign ninjas coming into this mansion." His words generated complicated emotions in the Konoha ninjas. Funiro sighed and said, "No wonder he didn't consider himself a traitor." Yugo asked, "Did he pass the information?" Fumito nodded. He said he agreed but added that he will only do it once. The man agreed and eliminated the person who had killed his family. In return, he informed the man when our previous squad arrived here. After passing on the information, the man gave him another deal. If he passed them information for the second time, he would eliminate the ones who supported the killer and allowed him to live in peace without any consequences for his actions. He agreed once again. When we were analyzing the map and the situation, he went out to report our arrival to that man. A frown formed on the faces of the Konoha ninjas. Yugo said, "That means that our arrival is likely known to the enemy." Fujin nodded. He asked, "Did he know anything about the man?" Fumito replied, "Nothing apart from his appearance." Fujin replied, "All right, draw his sketch. It might help if that person wasn't a ninja. Otherwise this is a dead end as well." Fumito nodded, though he got a lot of information from the servant. It wasn't very useful for their mission. The only person who mattered was that man, and the servant knew almost nothing about him. Fumito began drawing a detailed sketch while Fujin analyzed. "No wonder it took me so long to find this guy. If he was just a spy, then it would have been much easier. The excitement I felt earlier should have been from this guy seeing an opportunity to get rid of the ones that helped the killer, and until I asked whether they passed any information, he hadn't told any lies, and my threat of killing their family was useless against him as well. Regardless, this route will lead to a dead end as well. What should I do next?" Fujin began thinking of a plan. By the time Fumito was done, Fujin strategized, "The next step will be waiting patiently. I can make a decision based on whether such incidents occur again. If they do, then I'll need to use the clues to track and hunt them. If not, then I will have to make an arrangement for us to stay here for a long time." Fumito handed Fujin a paper and said, "This is how he looked." Fujin observed the sketch. He didn't identify the man. He said, "Let's leave it to the Ito family to find this guy." His team nodded. Searching an entire town would be too tedious and time-consuming with just 4 people. Fujin deactivated and collected the privacy seals he had attached and exited the room with his team. Yuya immediately asked, "Did you find anything?" Fujin nodded, handed him the sketch and asked, "Do any of you know this man?" Everyone observed the sketch but couldn't identify him. Fujin said, "He is the one who bribed this servant to inform him about the movement of foreign ninjas. So the knowledge of our arrival is already known to the enemies. Put the town under lockdown and find this man. He could be the key to helping us understand what is happening in your territory." Fujin's words enraged the Ito family members. Yuya asked, "He took bribes to betray us?" Fujin looked at Fumito, who explained what the bribe was. The explanation doused their anger. Yuya sighed and said, "I can understand his thought process, but this is still a betrayal of our trust. He won't be able to escape punishment." Fujin replied, "While I don't care what you do with your people, I'd advise you against it. Like others, he won't know what happened, so we can use him to pass false information to the enemies. If you can't find that man, you can keep an eye on him to find that man later on. In addition, you can also grant secret protection to his targets to trap and capture any attackers. Once the issue is resolved, feel free to do what you want to with him." Yuya thought about Fujin's words and immediately agreed. He quickly dispatched his ninjas to investigate the town. At the same time, he made living arrangements for the Konoha Anbu in the mansion. The Konoha ninjas made themselves comfortable. Sensing the opportunity, Fujin called Yuya and Yuta into their room. Yuya asked, "What did you want to discuss, and why did you tell us to come alone?" Fujin looked straight into his eyes and said, "I have a doubt. I'm wondering if you could provide me with a satisfactory answer." Yuya replied kindly, "Just say, we will do our best to fulfill any of your requests." Fujin didn't break eye contact and asked, "Is the Ito family behind these events?" Fujin's question shocked everyone in the room. Yuto quickly looked at Yuya, who looked angry. Yuya controlled his temper and asked in an unpleasant tone, "What do you mean?" From his reply, Fujin could see that Yuya wasn't a part of it. He said, "Stop being emotional and think rationally. Such a large incident without the support of someone from inside is difficult. Do you suspect anyone from your family is behind this, or perhaps providing them with information that could assist them in some way?" Yuya thought for a minute before shaking his head. He said, "I can't think of anyone doing something like this. There is nothing for our family to gain. Some rival families may have a hand, but even after investigating, we didn't find any proof." Fujin replied, "All right, keep an eye out. Though I don't have any proof either. This being an inside job has a high possibility. For that reason, I will only be informing you two about the next step of my plan." Yuya got serious. Yuto asked, "What plan did you come up with?" Fujin replied, "If the attacks continue happening, we will begin the hunt depending on the situation. But if the attacks stop like last time, then we will stay here for a week. You will take that opportunity to see how we act here. And you will arrange for 4 ninjas you trust to disguise as us. We will sneak out during the night without alerting anyone, and those 4 ninjas will continue disguising as us to deter any future incidents." Yuya and Yuto fell silent and began analyzing. Finally, Yuto let out a sigh and said, "Looks like that is the only feasible action." Fujin nodded and said, "If the incidents continue happening in the future, then we can meet someplace outside the town secretly and create a plan to stop them. But if they keep hiding, there isn't much we can do." Yuto nodded. They discussed some more details before leaving. While walking back, Yuya sighed and said, "Looks like this is our only way. The village won't send us more ninjas and Konoha doesn't want to station a squad here permanently." Yuto nodded and replied, "Yeah, but this is better than nothing. It could buy a few months of peace until they realize that something is wrong. We can use that time to investigate further." Yuya nodded. Since the information was leaked, they didn't have any hopes of catching the culprits and could just wish for temporary peace. Unknown to them, their prediction would turn out to be completely wrong. Chapter 334, A Creepy Feeling. Yuya and Yuto began overseeing the task of searching for the man. They showed the sketch around the town. However, not a single person similar to the sketch was seen by anyone in the town. Yuya went to Fujin and reported to him the state of investigation. Fujin said, "Looks like that man is a ninja. He should have used the transformation jutsu when the servant saw him." Yuya asked, "What do we do now?" Fujin instructed, "It's fine. Continue the search until everyone is asked. Once it is completed, inform me as soon as the ninjas stop the search." Yuya was surprised by the weird command, but he nodded. His ninjas investigated until the evening before giving up. Yuya informed Fujin that the search had stopped and the ninjas would return in a couple of minutes. Fujin nodded and dismissed him. Round 10 minutes after the ninjas returned, a chakra field covered the entire town. It was activated by Fujin, who sat at the top of the mansion. He thought, "I can't sense any other ninja. It looks like he is still being careful. That sucks. I was hoping that he'd drop his guard after the ninjas returned. Anyways, time to mess with him." In one ordinary house in the town, a man began sweating. He held his breath and didn't dare to even move a muscle. After 2 minutes, when the chakra field disappeared, he finally relaxed. He thought, "What a crazy bastard. Did he cover the entire town with his chakra field? Fortunately, I kept my chakra suppressed. If I had relaxed because those annoying ninjas gave up, I'd be dead now." He collected himself and decided, "It's best to not use my chakra for a while. I might not get lucky every time, but as long as I don't use my chakra, I will be safe." After consoling himself, he calmed down. However, his night wasn't peaceful. Throughout the night, Fujin and Fumito kept activating their chakra fields alternately. The first started to do them at an interval of 10 minutes, but then they suddenly changed the interval to 1 minute. They followed it up by going completely random. At some point, both stopped and didn't sense any more before suddenly sensing after 3 hours. The man didn't dare to sleep in case he accidentally released some chakra during his sleep, and he didn't dare to consume a soldier pill to stay awake, as that would make it difficult for him to hide his chakra. So he had a sleepless night followed by a sleepless day and another sleepless night. However, he didn't blow up his cover. Fujin finally decided to stop, as he had to leave after 6 days, and the Ito family wouldn't be able to replicate such sensing skills. During these 2 days, reports of missing people were sent continuously to the Ito family. However, Fujin didn't move out, as those incidents took place before they arrived or just after they had arrived, so there wasn't much point in moving out. The Ito family could only send their own squads out. After 2 days passed, the reports stopped coming. As they had predicted, the incidents had all stopped. For 3 days straight, not a single incident happened. Knowing Fujin's plan, Yuya began spreading the news that the incidents had stopped because the culprits were afraid of Konoha ninjas. Within a day, everyone in the town and neighboring villages knew that the Konoha ninjas were responsible for their peace. He also said that the Konoha squad will be staying in their territory until the culprits are found. That lifted the morale of the common people. However, out of everyone's expectations, a day later, a report arrived that shocked the Ito family and everyone living in their territory. Every single person from another village had suddenly gone missing. In addition, over 25 reports of missing people were filed from all around their territory. The entire mansion was in chaos. Fujin and his team were immediately summoned to the meeting room. Fujin analyzed the information and said, "It looks like they have decided to confront us." Everyone nodded. Fujin asked, "Do you have any plans?" Yuto replied, "Our initial plan was to attack one spot with all our forces. However, the sudden attack has caused a lot of panic in the population. We will have to split up to restore calm in the public." He pointed at the map and continued, "You guys go to the village with missing people. I have already gone to 4 of them and haven't found any clues. I will go to this village, which had 5 incidents. The rest will investigate the other cases." Fujin nodded and replied, "All right, we will take our leave then." Fujin didn't mind the plan. He wanted to move just with his squad in either case. The Taki ninjas would only get in their way. Yuto was the only Taki ninja with decent capabilities. The rest could barely be considered chunins. Yuto replied, "Good luck. I hope that you can resolve this issue in one go." Fujin nodded and his squad left the town and began moving towards their target. Round the same time, a couple of dozen more ninjas left the town. Yuto moved in a direction opposite Fujin's squad while the others were dispersed in all directions. Though the village where Fujin was heading wasn't close, it wasn't too far away from the town either. After 30 minutes of continuous running at the optimal speed, Fujin's squad reached the village. The squad stayed a sufficient distance from the village and hid among the trees while observing the village. Fujin's eyes stopped glowing as he muttered, "That's strange. I'm not seeing anyone's chakra, but the village is giving me strange creeps." Buniro replied, "Maybe it is because the village is empty." Fujin replied, "No, that's not it. Be on your guard. Fumito, let's investigate the village." Fumito nodded. Both he and Fujin activated their chakra fields. However, neither sensed anyone or anything strange. But Fujin had a frown on his face. He said, "Let's go. Everyone keep your chakra field active, be on your guard and stay behind me. Retreat when I say so without any questions. Is that understood?" His team nodded. They began walking towards the village. All 4 were actively sensing. In a minute, they appeared at the entrance of the village. Fujin stopped walking as he stared into the village with hesitation in his eyes. His team also stopped behind him and wondered whether he discovered anything. Fujin stood for 2 minutes but still couldn't make sense of anything. He thought, "My first thought is Fuin Jutsu, but this doesn't feel like it. I normally understand it very well when something is hidden with the help of seals. What is TH?" As he was thinking, his instincts warned him. Suddenly, a wide grin appeared behind his mask as he thought, "Not bad at all, you almost had me." The sword appeared in his right hand and he swung it forward with all his strength as he said, "Retreat." In the next moment, Fujin's sword met with a hardened black fist. Yugao, Fumito and Buniro immediately jumped backwards. The sword cut into the fist for a few millimeters but couldn't pierce any deeper. Instead, the force of the punch overwhelmed Fujin's sword. But Fujin wasn't bothered and instead used the force of the punch to be sent flying backwards. He laughed loudly and shouted in excitement, "Very impressive. Consider me impressed." Though Fujin laughed and said those words, they were only a taunt to provoke the ones hiding inside the barrier and make them come outside. He didn't want to fight on a battlefield created by the enemy. Unfortunately, no one fell for his taunt. Fujin continued moving backwards as he built up a large amount of chakra. Hundreds of shurikens, explosion tags, kunois, spikes, earth spears, and a few jutsus appeared out of thin air and came rushing at the Konoha ninjas. Wind release infinite breakthrough jutsu. Fujin released a supercharged infinite breakthrough jutsu at a massive speed and with dozens of wind blades and a couple of vacuum waves in it. The jutsu clashed with the incoming attacks. Chapter 335 Failing for the first time, the incoming weapons and jutsus clashed with Fujin's attack. Without any suspense, all were knocked back towards the village. In fact, the wind current was so strong that it looked like it would uproot the entire village. However, a massive invisible barrier appeared around the village. The winds hit the barrier and couldn't penetrate through it. Fujin observed the barrier and thought, "Fortunately I learnt those new seals. Looks like this is the work of a Fuin Jutsu Grandmaster. I almost fell into a deadly trap." While it was easy to become a seal master, Fuin Jutsu Grandmasters were very rare. The only one with whom Fujin interacted during missions was Uchiha Sora. Apart from him, Ja, Hiruzen, Tsunade and Danzo were the only ones he knew in Konoha that were Grandmasters for sure. Apart from them, there was one Fuin Jutsu Grandmaster who made inscribed seals for the Anbu, but Fujin never found his identity. Fujin did speculate there to be a few more in Konoha, but the knowledge wasn't publicly known. It was the same for the other villages. No information was available on who reached this level of Fuin Jutsu, due to how easy it was to hide. Though Fujin had come across seals inscribed by Grandmaster previously, they were in places where he had expected them to be and without anyone actively managing them. This was the first time for him to be ambushed on the battlefield by one, so he had never experienced how the advanced seals placed by them would be perceived by his senses. Fortunately, his long training in Fuin Jutsu prevented him from walking into a trap. Fujin thought, "It'd be great if I can see who this person is. Once the identity is leaked, he or she will be forced to stay hidden. But for now, I need to draw them out." While the barrier blocked the attack, Fujin and his teammates immediately retreated away from the village. Though they didn't sense anyone, they realized that many ninjas were hiding in the village. Inside the barrier, a frown formed on the face of the ninja who punched Fujin's sword. Seeing no way to lure the Konoha ninjas in, he shouted, "Chase and kill them." Immediately, dozens of ninjas rushed out of the barrier. In addition, 3 squads of ninjas appeared on the flanks and behind the Konoha ninjas. As soon as they appeared, the Konoha ninjas became very serious. Fujin wondered, "Egawaka ninjas, what is Egawaka planning by kidnapping so many people? This isn't their style of action." And Fujin looked at the large man that had punched his sword and thought, "What is so important that they sent Kitsuchi on this mission? Shit, this guy is considered S-rank. Though he is probably among the weaker S-ranked ninjas. He will still be a very difficult opponent. We need to retreat." Fujin's teammates also saw Kitsuchi and had a grim expression. One S-ranked ninja along with 96 AWA ninjas was too much for them to handle, and they didn't know if anyone else was still hidden in the village. At the same time, Kitsuchi looked at Fujin and thought, "Suzuki Fujin, so close. Had he stepped in, I could have killed him, but such alertness." An old man stepped next to him and said, "This young man has a good grasp of Fuin Jutsu. It's possible that he is a Grandmaster as well." "Don't take him lightly," Kitsuchi nodded and said, "He has a lot of other annoying capabilities as well. This will be a costly battle." If Fujin was aware that Kitsuchi was aware of his identity, he would be surprised. In addition, he would also smell something fishy. Unfortunately, he couldn't read Kitsuchi's thoughts, and he had already stepped into their trap. He appeared next to his team and said, "Formation 77 rear." His squad immediately understood the command. They stood in a triangle formation with Fujin at the center. All 3 grabbed a scroll and opened it while facing outwards and made the confrontation hand seal. Immediately, 33 kunai with explosive tags attached were launched from each scroll. Seeing the attack, a few of the AWA ninjas slammed their hands on the ground. First release Earth Wall Jutsu. Multiple layers of walls appeared in front of them, surrounding the Konoha ninjas from all sides. The kunais hit the wall and exploded. One layer of the walls was destroyed by the explosion, but the layers behind it stood. However, this was just the start of Fujin's tactic. 4 shadow clones of Fujin appeared around them. Without wasting any time, all flickered in front of the walls. Wind release vacuum serial wave jutsu. At the same time, Fujin's squad moved towards the enemy squad at their rear. Fumito rapidly weaved hand seals. Lightning release false darkness jutsu. Fujin's clones launched dozens of vacuum blades at the walls, all pierced through the walls with ease, and moved towards the Ela ninjas. A smile formed on the faces of Fujin's clones. Hitting enemies who thought that they were safe was a tactic that had yielded him too many kills. At the same time, the lightning spears launched by Fumito broke through the walls and moved towards the ninjas behind them. However, something happened that shocked Fujin's clones. As the vacuum blades approached the Iwa ninjas, every one of them got out of their way, and they didn't do it by just marginally avoiding them. Instead, they dodged, leaving sufficient distance to not be harmed by any suction force. It was almost as if they were waiting in anticipation to dodge the incoming attacks. The The 4 Awa ninjas dodged Fumito's lightning spears as well, but the Konoha ninjas had anticipated that. Fujin followed up by shooting 8 vacuum bullets, 2 for each ninja, from a very close range. However, as soon as the vacuum bullets were shot, the Awa ninjas immediately jumped out of the way. Almost as if they knew that Fujin would attack them in this manner. All the bullets were dodged safely. Fujin's eyes widened. He thought, what the hell, they dodged at such close range. Wait, I don't sense any chakra disappearing from my clones' attacks either. Did they all dodge? Fujin didn't understand. If he used the vacuum bullets at such close range, only elite Junins would be able to dodge in such a convincing manner. But the chakra levels of the 4 ninjas were much lower. In addition, his clones' attacks were dodged as well. But there was no way that all the dozens of Awa ninjas were elite Junins. Unfortunately, he didn't have any time to make sense of the situation. The 4 Awa Junins facing them counterattacked. Though the Konoha ninjas managed to deal with the attacks, it provided enough time for the remaining Awa ninjas to come swarming towards them. He thought, this is bad. My tactics' success depends on killing a few enemies quickly and demotivating the rest to chase us due to the costs they would have to incur. But since neither vacuum waves nor bullets managed to kill anyone, we will be swarmed by them. Fujin had a bad feeling. He properly observed the Awa ninjas. They didn't come flooding towards the Konoha ninjas to abuse their numerical superiority. Instead, only 7 additional squads rushed at them. The others quickly began establishing a perimeter to stop any escape. But they were very close as well, and could jump into the battle at any moment. It was as if the Awa ninjas wanted them dead at all costs. Seeing the situation, 2 of Fujin's clones moved towards a couple of incoming squads and stalled them. The remaining 2 clones got together and faced the direction which had the maximum number of Awa ninjas. Fire release Searing Migraine Jutsu, Wind release Infinite Breakthrough Jutsu. The 2 jutsus combined seamlessly, and a massive firestorm was launched at the incoming Awa ninjas. However, before they could be hit, Kitsuchi slammed his hands on the ground. A massive earth wall appeared in front of the Awa ninjas. The fire and wind combination jutsu hit the wall and was about to move around and over it, but the size of the wall kept increasing and surprisingly kept up with the expanding firestorm. The wall curved to properly protect all the Awa ninjas so that the firestorm would harmlessly pass by. Though the attack was stopped to the clones' dismay, it stopped the Awa ninjas behind the wall temporarily, allowing Fujin and his remaining clones a breather. One of the clones flickered in front of the incoming squad and shot a dozen air bullets. Once again, all the bullets were dodged. The clones stopped their counterattack while analyzing. They know about my skills. They move as soon as I attack. The same should have happened with vacuum waves. But why would everyone be aware of my skills? Suddenly, the clone flickered again and appeared behind them. The Awa ninjas quickly dispersed in 4 different directions immediately. Surprisingly, a cut appeared on the back of each of their necks. Before it could cut through, 2 of the ninjas hardened their bodies using Iron Skin Jutsu and stopped the attack. The remaining 2 dropped dead. The clone analyzed. Looks like they don't know all my tricks. Air bullets, infinite breakthrough and vacuum jutsus were anticipated, but Blade of Wind caught them off guard. As soon as the 2 ninjas died, a squad from the perimeter moved and attacked the clone, keeping him busy. So despite the killing, the situation of the Konoha ninjas didn't improve. Chapter 336 Countering Fujin. While one of Fujin's clones had some success in killing, the other clone couldn't get rid of his opponent so easily and was stuck fighting. He realized the same too. He analyzed. Did you know that I was coming here? Regardless, mid-ranged wind jutsus isn't all I can do. Suddenly a massive amount of wind was blasted behind him. He disappeared and appeared next to a ninja in the blink of an eye and slashed his sword at his neck. The ninja immediately raised his kunai while moving backwards and leaning backwards. At the same time, his teammates attacked Fujin's clone with shurikens. The sword sliced through the kunai, but the ninja leaned back enough to avoid the sword and the wind chakra flowing along it. The clone couldn't keep attacking due to the incoming attacks. Fujin's clone used Assassin's Rush again and tried attacking another ninja, but the ninja dodged once again, while the others attacked the clone. This time, the clone hardened his body with the Iron Skin Jutsu to block the counterattacks. At the same time, wind flowed along his blade as his sword released a wind slash along with the swing of his blade. The Awa ninjas quickly got out of the way of the slash and weaved the hand signs for the Iron Skin Jutsu. All 4 of them saw their skins turning black and hard to defend against the accompanying wind slashes. However, dozens of slashes still appeared on their bodies, including a few cuts across their necks, killing them on the spot. The clone looked at them coldly. The hand signs made him realize a crucial point. He thought, They are too familiar with my fighting style. If not for Susumu's genjutsu, they would have managed to block all the accompanying slashes, although the Awa ninjas thought that they had used the jutsu, when in reality they hadn't. While Hiruzen had asked him to keep the technique a secret, the current circumstances didn't allow him to hold back much. That said, it was still difficult for the bystanders to figure out why the Awa ninjas didn't use the jutsu to defend themselves. Fujin's clone turned his eyes towards the two squads rushing towards him and analyzed. All of these guys are Junins, though their speed isn't as high as mine. They are able to anticipate my attacks, movements, and react at the last moment to barely save themselves while the others distract me. Even though I will win eventually, I don't have the luxury of time. Once the remaining Iwa ninjas rush in, I will be the one at greater risk. Fujin himself felt the same issue. Despite having more chakra than his clones and his teammates to assist, his performance wasn't much better as they were facing two elite Junins, along with multiple Junins. Though he managed to kill 5 ninjas, he wasn't happy. He analyzed. These guys never come too close to me so that they will have sufficient time to dodge. In addition, every one of them is aiding others in defense, and all their attacks come from my blind spots. It is almost as if someone has properly studied my fighting style and trained these guys to fight most optimally against me. The only way I can overturn this situation and get a quick victory is by spamming Shadow Clone and eliminating their advantage of numbers. But in this situation, dividing my chakra that much is suicidal. 50 clones fighting means the amount of chakra I use would be 10 times higher than what I'm currently burning. He let out a sigh and thought, it would have been so much more convenient if I was here by myself. I could just run away like I did in the Land of Wind. Unfortunately, though these 3 are quick, they don't share my expertise in running away. Unknowingly, Fujin fell into a similar situation as his sensei had not too long ago, but it was unknown whether he would make the same choice as his sensei, or think of any other way. On the other side of the battlefield, separated by a firestorm and a massive wall, Kitsuchi thought, I had to waste so much chakra. If it wasn't for his wind vacuum attacks, we could have just escaped underground and sneaked upon them unharmed from this attack. But I can't keep waiting. The more time I waste here, the more of my men will die at Fujin's hands. I can't afford to lose so many well-trained ninjas. He suddenly increased the amount of chakra he poured into the wall. Thousands of spikes appeared on the outer surface of the wall. In an instant, all were launched at the Konoha ninjas. The 2 clones saw the incoming attacks. They couldn't dodge as the attack would hit Fujin and the rest, who were behind them. One clone slammed his hands on the ground, while the other charged up his chakra. Wind release vacuum cannon jutsu. Earth release earth wall jutsu. A clone shot a vacuum cannon at Kitsuchi. Immediately after, a wall rose from the ground. In terms of size and majesticance, it was far less impressive when compared to the wall raised by Kitsuchi. However, it did its job by blocking the earth spikes moving towards Fujin and his team at the same time. The vacuum cannon pierced through the gigantic wall and headed straight at Kitsuchi. A look of surprise appeared on Kitsuchi's face. He immediately dodged by moving underground. He thought, Roshi wasn't kidding. This kid is very dangerous. He concentrated chakra on his body. Earth release earth instantaneous body jutsu. Kitsuchi suddenly began moving towards Fujin's squad at a fast speed from underground. Fujin's clones sensed him and immediately shot vacuum bullets into the ground. To their surprise, Kitsuchi maneuvered around and dodged all the bullets and passed from under them. The clones thought, so fast while under the ground, even Renjuro isn't this agile under the ground. Fujin immediately sensed the massive chakra moving towards him from under the ground. A frown formed on his face as chakra gathered on his fist, just before Kitsuchi was about to reach his location. He punched the ground with all his might. The punch instantly cracked the ground. The ground trembled as a strong shockwave moved towards Kitsuchi. The shaking caught the remaining Awa ninjas off guard, and they immediately retreated momentarily in order to not give an opening to the Konoha ninjas. Kitsuchi, who was about to launch a couple of jutsus, was shocked. He immediately hardened his skin. Due to the shockwave, he felt some impact of the punch. Sweat appeared on his face as he thought, fortunately I used the iron skin jutsu, otherwise I could have been injured. Roshi didn't mention this absurd strength. Did he manage to hide some cards while fighting Roshi? Unlike Kitsuchi, Fujin didn't bother thinking much. The punch had brought him a slight breather. He immediately shot a dozen vacuum bullets at Kitsuchi. Kitsuchi immediately moved. However, the vacuum bullets fired by Fujin targeted all his escape routes as well. He could only move in one direction. By twisting his body far beyond what someone of his size should have been capable of, he barely managed to avoid the attack. The vacuum bullet grazed his left arm, leaving a slight cut despite the iron skin jutsu protecting him. Kitsuchi immediately appeared out of the ground. Before Fujin could attack, he said, "Suzuki Fujin, you are very impressive for your age." Fujin's eyes widened. Seeing Kitsuchi facing them, the other Awa ninjas quickly surrounded the Konoha ninjas in a couple of seconds. Fujin glanced and understood. Looks like escaping normally is not possible, but I guess that isn't my main concern right now, since the Awa ninjas weren't attacking. Fujin asked, "How do you know my identity, and why are you targeting the civilians?" Fujin had understood by now that Roshi had leaked all his combat abilities and fighting style to Iwa, but he was surprised to know that Iwa managed to link the spectral swordsman's identity to his real identity. Of course, what disturbed him the most was that they had prepared an army of Junins specifically to counter his style of combat. Kitsuchi smirked and replied, "You gave us quite a scare with your fight against Roshi. Did you think that we can't see behind your mask?" Fujin watched back without replying. Kitsuchi's statement gave no information. More importantly, he was building up a massive amount of chakra. Fujin understood why the remaining Iwa ninjas weren't jumping on them. Of course, Kitsuchi wouldn't give him the answer. When a secret gets leaked, a lot of suspicions arise. If Fujin suspected a Konoha higher up, it could decrease his loyalty to the village. Kitsuchi looked at Fujin and thought, 6 months of planning just to bait and trap him. It's time to deal the final blow. 6 months ago, Igawaka Kitsuchi walked into Onoki's office and put a few files on his desk and said in a tired voice, "It's too difficult to trap him, old man." Onoki looked at all the files on his desk. Every file had information on Suzuki Fujin, unknown to Fujin and anyone in Konoha. Igawaka had begun scheming against Fujin a few weeks after his clash against Roshi. Chapter 337, a 6-month-long scheme. Kitsuchi reported, "There is very little information on Fujin. None of our spies in Konoha have seen him in action or heard about his abilities. The only information they have is his fights during the Chunin exam 3 years ago, and that information is very outdated, and since he is in the Ambu, it is very difficult to track when he leaves on missions and to where, so trying to ambush him during a mission is almost impossible. We will have to lay a bait and hope Konoha sends him over." A frown formed on Onoki's face. He said, "Though it is normal for ninjas to hide their skills, some information eventually leaks out. To be so secretive. Hiruzen must be scheming something. If it wasn't for sending Roshi on that mission, we would have been completely in the dark. It's an even greater reason to eliminate him now." "Any news from Suna?" Kitsuchi shook his head and replied, "No, I wanted to get information about the ninjas who wreaked havoc there and see if that was this kid as well. However, none of our spies saw the culprits, and Suna has refused to give any information regarding the culprits." Onoki chuckled and commented, "It looks like they have been badly humiliated to hide it so deeply." Kitsuchi said, "So our only source of information is Roshi?" Onoki replied, "It's fine. He should have used most of his tricks against Roshi. Just make a plan based on it." "Did you decide on the location?" Roshi nodded and replied, "The land of waterfall." He opened a map and pointed at a location and said, "Round a year ago, our scheme against the Ito family was suspected to be destroyed by the spectral swordsman. 2 of our Ambu died while the Kawaguchi family forces were decimated, so there is a chance that he will be sent here once again. If he does, we will eliminate him and withdraw in order to avoid any retaliatory actions by Konoha and prevent escalating the conflict. If he doesn't, and Konoha doesn't send anyone equally powerful, then I will destroy the Ito family. We use their territory as a base and change the power structure in nearby territories, so at least a third of the influential families in the land of waterfall will be on our side. By the time Takagonka and Konoha react, it will be too late for them to do anything." Kitsuchi further explained the details of his plan to target the civilians, to create panic in the land of waterfall. Onoki thought for a bit and nodded. He replied, "It's a good plan. Both situations would be advantageous for us. The second situation will be a great diplomatic victory for us. It will offset the losses we had in the land of grass and make the situation more advantageous for us. However, if we manage to kill him, it will be another diplomatic disaster for us, as the land of waterfall will be completely pushed into Konoha's camp just like the land of grass. But considering his potential, it's a trade-off I'm willing to make." Kitsuchi nodded. He agreed with Onoki's decision. Someone forcing Roshi to resort to the tailed beast mode and still managing to escape at the age of 14 was a huge future threat to Igawaka. Onoki asked, "Have you begun the training?" Kitsuchi nodded. He, along with Onoki, had discussed Fujin's fighting style, jutsus, their mastery and specialties extensively with Roshi and Jin. After analyzing Fujin's skills, they came up with a proper training plan to counter Fujin. Kitsuchi replied, I have selected 43 Junins and 52 elite Chunings so far. I am still looking for around 30 more. The ninjas I have selected all have good speed and reactions. I have already begun training the ones who don't know the Iron Skin Jutsu. The ones who know it are working on reducing the hand seals needed for the jutsu. This jutsu will make most of his wind and fire release jutsus pointless against them. The only threats it leaves are the vacuum jutsus and getting hit by his sword directly. Onoki nodded and thought, good, I would have done the same. I could have created a plan myself. But I'm not sure how my back will be during the next war. Kitsuchi will have to be the one to lead our forces on the battlefield. This will be a good opportunity to test his tactical skills. As for leadership, he has already proven that in the previous war. As his back problems kept worsening, Onoki knew that he would need to find a successor quickly. Unfortunately, though Kitsuchi was strong and was considered a rank S ninja, he was no match for the other kaijus. The 4th Reikage, the Sanins, and the 4th Mizukage all outmatched him by a large margin. Rossa was the only one he could compete against, so Onoki was reluctant to pass the tactical position to him. Kitsuchi continued, the bigger problem will come next. Roshi said that Fujin could flicker continuously, without making any seals. He seems to have trained his body a lot to increase his natural speed to a ridiculous level as well. And he has mastered Assassin's Rush Jutsu on top of it. In order to counter that, I want you to ask Hon to aid in our training. It is impossible to increase their speed to such a level quickly, but we can raise their reaction speed and ability to defend. Dodge and survive by letting Hon make them experience what facing someone so fast will feel like. In fact, we could do even better. Roshi said that though Fujin was faster than him, his speed is still lesser than Hon's, so after facing Hon for a few months, they might be able to see and react to Fujin very easily. A smile formed on Onoki's face as he replied, all right, I will send Hon over. Kitsuchi understood why Onoki smiled. He thought, this will allow Hon to interact closely with our ninjas who may fear him. More importantly, after this training is done, all the elite Chunings will be as strong as Junins. We will have around 60 new Junins who will have very high survival skills during the next war. If our luck is good, then a couple of Junins could also reach the elite Junin level. Kitsuchi added, I also need a Fuin Jutsu Grandmaster to trap Fujin. I will send a few squads over to scout the land of Waterfall and create a proper plan of action. Onoki nodded and assigned one of their 3 Fuin Jutsu Grandmasters to aid Kitsuchi. The two discussed a few more details before Onoki said, good work, I will leave this matter to you. Kitsuchi nodded and took his leave. Onoki looked at his back and thought, since the time of peace started, the readiness of our ninjas has dropped several levels, especially after Minato died and Konoha became weaker. This is a good opportunity to start rebuilding our famed elite armies. Once this mission is completed and the ninjas have high motivation, I will push Kitsuchi to expand the numbers of this force to 500 ninjas. At the same time, I will start rebuilding the 1,000 ninja elite army units that we are famed for. With the 3rd Reikage and the 4th Hokage no longer alive, we won't suffer similar losses as in the last Great War. Once the armies are raised, the only thing missing will be commanders. Roshi, Hon and Kitsuchi could handle the next war, but we will need the next generation to step up for the wars after that. Thankfully, this generation does have some promising youngsters. Akatsuchi has shown a lot of promise. So has my granddaughter. There is also the Daidara kid who has the explosion release Keki Genkai. If these 3 reach the S rank, then Iwa will be safe for another 50 years. After Kitsuchi left, he selected more suitable ninjas and began the training with full intensity. For 3 months straight, the ninjas trained with a plan tailored to counter Fujin. Every single ninja became capable of using the Iron Skin Jutsu rapidly and had sufficient defenses to defend against normal wind jutsus. At the same time, Hon used his speed in order to give the ninjas a taste of what a fight against Fujin would be like. The initial phase of that training resulted in a lot of pain for the ninjas, as they couldn't even see Hon move. However, after 3 months of being beaten daily, the reactions of the ninjas improved several times. They could finally protect themselves from Hon's attacks. As an added bonus, the beatings also motivated them to learn the Iron Skin Jutsu better. A few ninjas managed to learn how to use that jutsu without any hand seals. 3 months later, Kitsuchi left for the land of Waterfall along with the ninjas, who were adequately prepared in his opinion. The remaining ninjas continued their training and joined his campaign at a later stage. Chapter 338 Patience after entering the land of Waterfall. Kitsuchi kept a major chunk of the ninjas he trained with himself and distributed the remaining along with more Iwa ninjas round the Ito family's territory. They immediately began their plan of creating unrest in the territory by kidnapping civilians. At the same time, Kitsuchi summoned his best spy. Sho appeared in front of him and asked, "What are your commands for me, Kitsuchi-sama?" Kitsuchi said, "I want you to infiltrate the Ito family's main town. Keep an eye on the ninjas coming in and out of the town." Sho nodded and asked, "All right, is there anything in particular I should keep track of?" Kitsuchi nodded and answered, "Yes, I'm looking for a Konoha ninja named Suzuki Fujin." Kitsuchi showed Fujin's appearance from the bingo book and added, "He is now in the Anbo and generally wears hawk or turtle masks." The last time he moved, his teammates were a blonde Yamanaka ninja, a long purple-haired kunoichi who uses a sword, both likely in their early 20s, and the last member was probably around the same age as Fujin. If a squad that is similar in appearance shows up, then you have to inform me right away. Kitsuchi handed him 40 seals of 5 types. The seals were specifically made by the Fuin Jutsu Grandmaster sent by Onoki to assist Kitsuchi. He picked up the first seal and said, "If you recognize Fujin's squad, then crush this seal." "I will understand the message." He pointed at the other 4 seals and said, "This seal is if an elite Junin from Konoha arrives instead. This seal is for any other Konoha squads, and the last seal is for considerable reinforcements being sent by Takigonka, like at least more than 20 ninjas, and the last seal is to inform us about when Konoha's squad quit their mission and leave. Are the instructions clear?" Sho took the seals and said, "I will do my best, Kitsuchi-sama." Kitsuchi smiled and said, "Good luck. Don't engage in any battles with them though. We won't be able to provide much aid." Sho nodded and took his leave. A few days later, he entered the Ito family town under disguise. Round a week after entering, Sho convinced that servant to work for him. When the previous Amber squad from Konoha arrived, he quickly crushed the appropriate seal to inform Kitsuchi. When the Ambu squad went to investigate the villages with the missing population, Kitsuchi checked them and confirmed that they weren't Fujin's squad. Due to the seals, the Ambu squad never suspected anyone spying on them while they were inspecting the village. Kitsuchi waited patiently for a month until the Konoha Enbu retreated and began the attacks after they left to force Konoha to send an even stronger squad. Luckily for him, Fujin's squad was the next one to be sent. When Sho learnt about the appearance of Fujin's squad, he immediately crushed the seal to inform Kitsuchi. As soon as he received the message, Kitsuchi was thrilled. His 6-month-long effort and patience were finally rewarded. He cooperated with the Fuin Jutsu Grandmaster to create the perfect trap for him. He redistributed his forces, calling back the majority of the ninjas that he had trained to counter Fujin. Once the distribution was done, they did multiple attacks at the same time to force the Ito family to split up their forces, so that Fujin's squad would have little to no reinforcements, and thus prevent any unforeseen circumstances from occurring. When Fujin reached the village with just his squad, his tactic succeeded. The only part of the plan that didn't succeed was that Fujin didn't step into the village. Kitsuchi didn't manage to find out about Fujin's expertise in Fuin Jutsu, and thus revealed a flaw at the last step. Despite that, Fujin was in a very bad position in Kitsuchi's eyes, so his plan could be considered a complete success. As he continued building up his chakra, Kitsuchi said, "Surrender, otherwise you and your teammates will have no means of survival. You go." Fumito and Buniro became very tense. However, to Kitsuchi's surprise, Fujin chuckled and said, "I recall Roshi saying something similar. Still, what a good scheme." Formation 66. As soon as they heard that, chakra gathered at the feet of the 4 Konoha Enbu and Fujin's clones. All jumped high into the air. Almost instantly, Kitsuchi slammed his hands on the ground. Earth release opening earth rising excavation jutsu. A large mound appeared under the Konoha ninjas, and a huge blast of force was released at them. Fujin looked down at the attack and thought, "I thought that this attack could only be used to target the ones hiding underground. To think that he would use this against us. If we were hit directly, even I might have been blown apart even if I used Iron Skin Jutsu." Fortunately, Kitsuchi couldn't hide the high amount of chakra build-up for this jutsu, giving Fujin plenty of time to plan a counterattack. Fujin's clones all made the same hand seal. At the same time, wind moved blasted around their bodies and helped them move in such that they were vertically above each other with the 4 Konoha ninjas at the top. Immediately, 4 layers of barrier appeared. A frown formed on Kitsuchi's face as he noticed the barrier. The frown became worse as he noticed a large amount of chakra Fujin was building up. He thought, such proficiency with the barrier, but it won't help him much in this situation. all barriers can be destroyed. He will eventually run out of chakra. The bigger issue is the chakra he is building up. What is he planning? The blast force due to Kitsuchi's jutsu hit the first barrier. It crumbled instantly. The clone dispelled itself before the attack hit him. The second barrier endured the impact for a couple of seconds before crumbling as well. The second clone dispelled itself as well. Finally, the attack hit the third barrier. Multiple cracks appeared on the barrier, but it held on, seeing that Kitsuchi's attack was stopped. The remaining Iwa ninjas weaved hand signs, earth release stone pistol jutsu. All the Iwa ninjas shot small stones at the barrier. As they traveled up in the air, their size increased until they could be considered boulders. However, Fujin wasn't concerned about the attack. He bit his thumb and thought, "It was great that I didn't expose this against Roshi, otherwise I'm afraid that Onoki might have shown up to kill me." Is summoning jutsu, just like how Kitsuchi patiently waited for Fujin. Fujin had been patiently hiding his trump cards as well. Very few knew about his summon, or his mastery of Fuin jutsu and barriers. Not a single person was aware that he could use lightning jutsus. Those were the trump cards he saved. When a day like this arrived, the summoning jutsu directly consumed nearly 35% of Fujin's chakra. The stones shot by the Ela ninjas crashed into the third barrier and crushed it as well, but the clone safely moved above the last barrier. Despite there being only one more barrier, the Ela ninjas didn't rejoice. A loud jagged roar was heard throughout the region for multiple kilometers. A massive silhouette of a winged saber-twa appeared above the large barrier. He spread his wings wide and stared at the Ela ninjas below as the Konoha ninjas landed on his back. The Ela ninjas gulped as they felt a menacing stare. Kitsuchi was shocked. He thought, "What the hell, he has a flying summon." "Up in the sky," the beast said grumpily. "Took you 3 long years to summon me." Fujin chuckled and said, "Kurogun, everyone below is an enemy, so feel free to go on a rampage, but be careful, they spit out rocks at a high speed." Kurogun said, "All right, I had always heard about how humans are very innovative and skillful. I hope they live up to it." Fujin smirked. All 3 of Ryo's children were unique. The youngest, Goro, had a mischievous personality and loved pranking and having fun. The middle one, Kaito, loved flying and spent most of his time sailing over the vast world, and his oldest, Kurogun, was a battle maniac. He regularly sought strong foes and entered into bloody duels or wars. It was the reason why his body was covered in fearsome scars. Kitsuchi thought, "Shit, my plan didn't consider his ability to fly. If he decides to fly away, there isn't much I can do." Kitsuchi's expression became very ugly. Fujin had rarely shown his summon to anyone, so even in Konoha, very few knew what his summon was. In fact, even Renjuro, Hoka and Teru, the 3 people closest to him, didn't know what his summon was, so there was no way for Iwa to get this information. Despite the unfavorable circumstances, some hope appeared in Kitsuchi's eyes. He analyzed, "I expected him to fly away with the help of his summon. But surprisingly they are hovering in the same area. If he decides to stay and fight, I might have some opportunity. But it is still very low. An opponent who could fly and attack from a range was very annoying to deal with, but Kitsuchi had trained the ninjas in survival. So he had some confidence in fighting against Fujin. As he planned his counterattack, the last barrier disappeared and the 2 clones began falling to the ground. At the same time, nature chakra gathered in Kurogun's wings as he flapped them. A very strong windstorm, multiple times stronger than Fujin's infinite breakthrough jutsu, was released towards the ground. Kurogun perfectly controlled the winds so that they wouldn't hit the 2 clones. As soon as the winds passed the clones, they got in action as well. A fire release searing migraine jutsu. Both exhaled a massive amount of fire into those strong winds. Iwa ninjas looked up as hellfire rained down on them. Chapter 339 Annoyance. A squad of 4 Takigonka ninjas were rushing towards the Ito family's town. One said, "Captain, what do you think is happening in this territory? It's been nearly 4 months since the first missing case was reported. And despite sending so many ninjas, they have still failed." The captain of the squad replied, "It's difficult to say. The situation is very serious and peculiar. If the Ito family doesn't resolve this soon, then they might be overthrown." The ninja was surprised. He asked, "Is it that serious? After all, only some civilians went missing." The captain answered, "That is why no serious action has been taken until now. However, as the number of missing cases keeps rising, everyone will become very serious. After all, what's the use of a ninja village if it can't protect its citizens? Everyone will begin migrating to other countries, so it is a critical period for the Ito fam." He suddenly stopped speaking. All 4 ninjas stared in the western direction. Their eyes opened wide and their throats dried as they saw a massive firestorm raining down from the skies. One of the ninjas balked and muttered in terror, "What the hell is happening there?" Another gulped and commented, This looks like Armageddon." The captain said, "I don't know, but we need to get away and go to the town very quickly if something like this falls on the town. The entire town will be destroyed." They immediately ran away. Unlike them, Iwa ninjas didn't have the option to run away. Kitsuchi rapidly made hand seals and shouted, "Take cover." Hearing his command, every Iwa ninja who wasn't close to him went underground. Kitsuchi slammed his palms on the ground. A gigantic dome rose from the ground and covered him and the ninjas around him. The firestorm finally impacted the ground. In an instant, all vegetation in the vicinity was destroyed. The fire spread in the surrounding areas, and soon a massive forest fire would spread in the land of Waterfall. The sharp winds released by Kurogun impacted the ground and the dome. The dome and the ground were instantly covered in long scars. However, the dome held on, and the sharp winds couldn't dig into the ground. The attack, which the Taki ninjas believed would destroy an entire town, ended up not injuring even a single Ela ninja. Fujin observed from the sky, "Normally, digging into the ground against me is suicide. But everyone who went underground is at least 40 meters deep into the ground. I can't penetrate that deep. They know how deep my attacks can penetrate. Sai, this is why I like keeping my abilities a secret. Fighting is infinitely easier when the enemy doesn't know what to expect from me. Still, though hiding deep underground counters me to an extent, they are trapped there as I can attack when they try to come up." Unfortunately, there was no way for Fujin to hide his exposed secrets once again. In fact, after this battle, even more of his secrets would be exposed. Igawatka might even spread them around, so even the other hidden villagers might become aware of his capabilities. While Fujin was observing, Kurogun said, "Killing them won't be easy. Fujin, support me." Fujin didn't need to be told twice. He immediately riled his chakra up and said, "My clones will provide you with ground support. Take advantage of the openings." Fujin's clones landed on the ground. At the same time, Fujin shot a vacuum cannon at the top of the dome Kitsuchi had created. At the same time, Kurogun opened his mouth and exhaled wind breath at the same spot. Within the dome, some sensors said, "They are attacking the dome from the top. Be ready to defend us." Before they completed saying, the vacuum cannon hit the top of the dome. It penetrated the dome with ease, leaving a gigantic hole. Kitsuchi, who was standing at the center of the dome, immediately moved out of the way while hardening his body. He weaved a hand seal. First release fist rock jutsu. The vacuum cannon hit the ground and created a 25-meter deep hole in the ground. Mere fractions of a second later, Kurogun's wind breath arrived at the opening created by the vacuum cannon. At the same time, Kistachi's right arm turned into rock and he punched towards the hole. Aiming to block the opening, he shouted, "Be careful. We don't know what that summon can do." The ninjas nodded and all instinctively hardened their bodies with the iron skin jutsu as well. They didn't want to escape underground as they knew that coming back up and joining the battle would be a challenge. Kurogun's wind breath, which traveled like a beam, suddenly dispersed into all directions, filling up the inside of the dome. A second later, Kitsuchi's rock fist hit the hole and blocked the attack. Seeing the winds, most Ewa ninjas quickly used more defensive jutsus. Numerous walls of varied shapes appeared in the dome. However, 3 ninjas were slower by a few milliseconds. The wind breath hit them. Despite being covered by the iron skin jutsu, hundreds of small cuts appeared on their bodies. Blood began sprinkling from their bodies like a fountain. The surrounding Eila ninjas watched in horror as their bodies were turned into minced meat in mere seconds. At the same time, Kitsuchi's rock fist was rapidly being eroded. He thought in shock, such terrifying affinity to the wind nature and the ability to fly. Shit, he will be a menace in the next war. Probably only the old man Onoki and the 2 Jin Hyukaras can force him to retreat. The Eila ninjas didn't have any time to grieve for their fallen comrades. They sensed the dome getting damaged, thanks to their long training. They all knew what was coming. At the next moment, 36 newer and smaller holes appeared in the dome, as Fujin and his 2 clones shot a dozen vacuum bullets each at the dome. The Ewa ninjas quickly took evasive actions, thanks to being exposed to Hon's blinding speed. They were all able to dodge the attacks, despite the low distance between them. At the same time, Kitsuchi weaved more hand seals and slammed his hands on the ground. The dome began transforming into spears. In a second, hundreds of pointed earth spears were launched in all directions at a very high speed. Fujin's clones immediately raised an earth wall to protect themselves. Despite being a couple of 100 meters above in the sky, Kurogan was under attack as well. He immediately flapped his wings again. Hundreds of wind blades were launched from his wings. They hit the incoming spears and knocked them back to the ground. A few continued down towards the Igawatga ninjas, who quickly moved out of the way, allowing the wind blades to hit the ground without harming anyone, and raising a dust cover. A frown formed on Fujin's face as he analyzed. This is getting annoying. Why does everyone have to be so nimble and evasive? Though Fujin had fought against enemies while being outnumbered vastly, he had never been troubled so much by them. In most cases, he could use the weaker ninjas to create a handicap for the truly strong enemy ninjas. The losses would instantly make their hearts bleed and make them reluctant to continue the fight. For the first time, he truly had to experience what it was like to be outnumbered helplessly. He turned his eyes towards the ninjas hiding underground and thought, even them, instead of coming up to the surface, they are staying that deep and moving towards the village. Once they enter the barrier, I might not be able to harm them. Kitsuchi had established strict protocols and procedures to be followed while fighting Fujin in order to keep his losses to a minimum. Anyone who escaped underground had to retreat back to the village and then rejoin the battle instead of coming up normally. Though it would take more time, it was better than dying needlessly, in Kitsuchi's opinion. Fujin observed the situation while analyzing. What should I do? I knew that killing Kitsuchi wouldn't be possible, but I wanted to eliminate these ninjas that were specially trained to deal with me. But is there any point in doing so if it is so difficult? After all, Kurogan's summoning has a time limit. And I can't sustain my chakra for a very long time either. As Fujin was planning, his clones moved towards the Awa ninjas who were with Kitsuchi. Sensing an opportunity, Kurogan dived down. Fujin quickly ate a soldier pill and said, "Kurogan, focus on safety first. It's fine if we can't kill many, but ensure that you can fly us away from here." He quickly instructed his teammates, "If you see an opportunity, use your long-range jutsus, especially your lightning release Fumito, to kill or injure them. But don't fall off Kurogan. It will be very difficult to save you if you do." Fujin's teammates ate the soldier pills as well and nodded. They all knew that survival would be impossible if they were to fall off. Kitsuchi saw Kurogan dive down and thought, "Finally, I can have an opportunity." But if he is diving towards us, he must be very confident in his close-range fighting abilities. The long-range battle would soon end, and instead, a mid- and close-range battle would begin. Chapter 340. An intense clash. Fujin's clones approached the Ela ninjas from opposite directions. Wind chakra flowed through both their swords, and at the same time, they puffed up their cheeks, preparing the vacuum bullets. The two elite Junins immediately faced each clone. Though this was the first time Fujin and Kurogan were fighting together, both had practiced several times. He knew what the clones were about to do. He quickly closed in on the Ela ninjas from the top while gathering wind energy in his mouth. At the same time, Fujin created another shadow clone. The clone looked towards the village with the missing people. Wind release instantaneous body jutsu. He disappeared from Kurogan's back and appeared right on top of the Awa ninjas, who were traveling towards the village through the underground. At the same moment, the two shadow clones swung their swords, releasing two long wind slashes along with accompanying winds, sandwiching the Awa ninjas between them. The elite Junin slammed their hands on the ground and shouted, their cheeks are puffed. "Keep an eye out for the vacuum bullets." The wind slashes hit the walls, leaving a large scar at their centers, but the wall withstood the attacks. A second later, dozens of vacuum bullets pierced through the walls. At the same time, Kurogan opened his mouth wide. Kitsuchi's eyes widened as he noticed 8 spheres of wind in Kurogan's large mouth. Kitsuchi shouted, "Keep an eye on the sky as well." In an instant, he fired them at the Awa ninjas who were dodging the vacuum bullet. Kitsuchi had a very ugly expression, though Fujin was frustrated by the Awa ninjas' consistency in dodging his deadly attacks. Kitsuchi was equally frustrated with Fujin's tactics, if not more. He rapidly weaved hand signs as he thought, first those deadly vacuum jutsus, and now a 3-directional attack. My ninjas are barely even able to dodge the vacuum bullets by paying full attention to him. But now not only do they have to dodge attacks from the front, but they also have to keep an eye on their back while also keeping an eye on the skies. Not to mention, just like his vacuum jutsus, the perverse attack of his summon also cuts through iron skin jutsu. The attack from multiple directions finally made the Ela ninjas struggle. They dodged the vacuum bullets coming from the front and quickly twisted their necks to look at the attacks coming from behind. Fortunately, they could sense Fujin's vacuum bullets and Kurogan's air bullets moving rapidly through their chakra fields. Unfortunately, they had very little time and space to maneuver their bodies. They moved their bodies in a manner that allowed them to save their vitals and avoid any lethal injuries. A few vacuum bullets grazed past the hardened arms and legs of the Ela ninjas, leaving a few deep scars. However, to make matters worse, the large air bullets fired by Kurogan maneuvered as well and targeted 8 Awa ninjas. In the nick of time, 8 inclined walls appeared from the ground, providing a cover for those ninjas. Unfortunately, Kitsuchi couldn't accurately calculate the directions in which they would dodge, nor was he aware that the air bullets could maneuver in the air. He ended up miscalculating for 2 ninjas, both of whom were engulfed by the air bullets. The ninjas could only hope that their iron skin jutsus protected them. Though the winged saber were called the attackers' air bullets, that was only due to their large size. In terms of size, they were thrice as large as Fujin's vacuum cannon. Despite their comrades being hit, the Awa ninjas, who weren't under attack, ignored it and counterattacked. 6 ninjas each, led by an elite Junin, rushed to intercept the 2 shadow clones. The remaining shot stone pellet jutsu at Kurogan, who had come much closer to the ground. Only Kitsuchi kept an eye on the 2 ninjas that were hit, as his eyes turned red. On Kurogan's back, Yugao and Buniro immediately used defensive jutsus, while Kurogan flew out of the way. The Awa ninjas continued their attack but were met by Fumito and Fujin's counterattack. Fujin shot vacuum bullets at the Awa ninjas through the incoming stone pellets, while Fumito weaved hand signs. Lightning release force darkness jutsu. He launched multiple spears of lightning, forcing some of the Awa ninjas to dodge. However, he controlled the jutsu and chased after the Awa ninjas, forcing them to use a few defensive jutsus while evading. Meanwhile, Kitsuchi was surprised. He looked at the 2 ninjas who were hit by Kurogan's attack. Despite taking the full hit, only a few scars appeared on their hardened skin. He thought, so this attack isn't as powerful as the previous one. I was afraid that they would be shredded into pieces as well. He turned his attention towards Kurogan, who was still being attacked, and analyzed. So far I have seen 3 attacks from him. The first one is where he flaps his wings and generates a windstorm. Though that attack is strong, it can't break through our wall defenses. Though considering their momentum, they might still harm us despite the iron skin jutsu. The second is the beam he shot earlier. It gets stopped by walls as well, but iron skin jutsu doesn't protect against it. And the giant balls of wind look to be his weakest attack. Akatsuchi looked at Fujin on Kurogan's back and thought, though killing him right now is very difficult, I should collect all the information I can about him. It will be useful if we plan another trap or if he makes a move against Iwa in the future. Kurogan also noticed that the Awa ninjas weren't harmed badly by the attack. He analyzed. These guys have a tough body. It's almost similar to those tortoises in the northern lakes. Unfortunately, I haven't yet completely mastered infusing nature energy into the air bullets like I can with the wind breath, and the amount we can infuse in the windstorm created by flapping wings is very low. It looks like wind breath will be the only method I can kill them with, but it takes a lot of chakra and nature energy. I can concentrate that much nature energy into that attack only 3 more times. Closer to the village, Fujin's shadow clone placed his palms on the ground. He converted 80% of his chakra to supercharge his jutsu. Wind release geyser creation jutsu. Numerous cracks appeared around the clone, forming a web-like appearance. The cracks spread up to 50 meters under the ground. The Awa ninjas, who were traveling underground, were surprised by the sudden change. They all instinctively used iron skin jutsu to protect themselves. A second later, sharp winds ran through all the cracks, hitting the Awa ninjas. As they endured the sharp hits, they thought, thankfully we mastered this jutsu. Otherwise all of us might have died. None of them had expected to be in danger, despite staying so deep underground. Fujin's clone took a few heavy breaths as his chakra became very low. He thought, time to end this. On the other side of the battlefield, Kurogan once again shot multiple air bullets at the Awa ninjas. He followed it up by flapping his wings and launching a windstorm at the Awa ninjas. Kitsuchi ignored the bullets as they didn't pose many challenges and could be dodged. He slammed his hands on the ground. Multiple rocks of large size were launched into the air, blocking the way of the sharp wind slashes within the windstorm. The wind slashes hit the rocks and sent them flying towards the Awa ninjas. However, the rocks neutralized their sharpness and eliminated their threat towards the Awa ninjas. Though the rocks were still coming at them, they were far easier to dodge than the unpredictable wind slashes in the windstorm. However, Kurogan didn't mind this result, seeing that all the Awa ninjas, other than Kitsuchi, were focused on dodging the rocks. He immediately sped up and appeared right on top of him. He raised his massive front foot. In an instant, a massive amount of wind chakra gathered, engulfing his leg. Kitsuchi's eyes widened as he noticed wind chakra gathering on his paw. He immediately weaved a hand seal. As release rock fist jutsu, his right arm was covered by rocks, which kept increasing its size. He moved backwards as he punched towards the incoming paw. The paw and the rock fist clashed. In an instant, Kitsuchi was dragged backwards due to the force of the paw. The rock first kept crumbling at the point of impact. Kitsuchi thought, such physical might. Thankfully I moved backwards, otherwise I could have been crushed under this enormous paw. Kirogan's paw almost entirely crushed the rock fist, knowing that he couldn't hold on. Kitsuchi flickered backwards. However, his eyes widened as he saw a figure flicker even faster towards him. Noticing the opportunity, Fujin flickered towards Kitsuchi, his sword overflowing with wind chakra.